So if you've been on the internet for a while, you've probably heard of creepypastas. They're basically short stories designed to get spread around. And there's a lot of old ones that are pretty well known and kind of famous for being super old and classic. I decided to make this video where I go through reading a bunch of old creepypastas, giving my thoughts on them, and doing some other things. I decided to do this because it's October, it's spooky month also. I wasn't around on the internet when creepypastas were actually popular, so I'm finally getting a chance to actually take a look into them because a lot of the old ones are pretty bad, some are pretty interesting, and some are pretty good actually. But let's start with The Rake. A Suicide Note, 1984. As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to assuage any guilt or pain I have introduced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him, for once I awoke and felt his presence, and once I awoke and saw his form. Once again I awoke and heard his voice, and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear of what I might next awake to experience. I cannot ever wake. Goodbye. Found in the same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to William and Rose, and 1 loose personal letter with no envelope. Dearest Linny, I have prayed for you. He spoke your name. A journal entry, translated from Spanish, 1880. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I see his eyes when I close mine. They are hollow and black. They see me and pierce me. His wet hand, I will not sleep. His voice. Some unintelligible text. Mariner's Log, 1691. He came to me in my sleep from the foot of my bed. I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not return here at the request of the Rake. From a Witness, 2006. 3 years ago, I had returned from a trip from Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were all very exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids right to bed and called it a night. At about 4 a.m. I woke up thinking my husband had gotten up to use the restroom. I used the moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and told him I thought he had got out of bed. When he turned to face me, he gasped and pulled up to his feet from the end of the bed so quickly his knees almost knocked me out of the bed. He grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for half a second, I was able to see what caused such a strange reaction. At the foot of a bed, sitting and facing away from us, there was what appeared to be a naked man or a large, hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car or something. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened by it, but more concerned as to its condition. At this point, I was somewhat under the assumption that we were supposed to help him. My husband was peering over his arm and knee, tucked into the fetal position, occasionally glancing at me before returning to the creature. In a flurry of motion, the creature scrambled around the side of the bed, then crawled quickly in a flailing sort of motion right along the bed until it was less than a foot away from my husband's face. The creature was completely silent for about 30 seconds, or probably closer to 5, it just seemed like a while. Just looking at my husband. The creature then placed its hands on its knees and ran into the hallway, leading to the kids' rooms. I screamed and ran for the light switch, planning to stop him before he hurt my children. When I got into the hallway, and the light from my bedroom was enough to see it crouching, hunched over about 20 feet away, he turned to me, looked directly at me, covered in blood. He flipped the switch on the light, and I saw my daughter Clara. The creature ran down the stairs, while my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was very badly injured. She spoke only once more in her short life. She said, "He is the Rake." My husband drove his car into a lake that night while rushing our daughter to the hospital. He did not survive. Being in a small town, the news got around pretty quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspaper took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published, and the local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel near my parents' house. After we decided to return home, I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located a man in the next town over who had a similar story. We got in contact and began talking about our experiences. He knew two other people in New York who had seen the creature we now referred to as the Wraith. It took 4 of us, about 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believed to be accounts of the Wraith. None of them gave any details, history, or follow-up. One journal had an entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages, and never mentioned again. A ship's log explained of an encounter, saying that they were only told to leave by the rake. That was the last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature's visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to, my daughter included. This led us to wonder if the rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near my bed and left it running all night every night. For 2 weeks, I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around in bed each day. When I woke up, by the end of the 2nd week, I was quite used to the occasional sound of sleep, while blurring through the recording at 8 times the normal speed. This still took me almost an hour every day. On the first day of the 3rd week, I thought I heard something different. What I found was a shrill voice. It was the rake. I can't listen to it long enough to even begin to transcribe it. I haven't let anyone listen to it yet, and all I know is that I've heard it before. I believe that it spoke when it was sitting in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything at the time, but for some reason the voice on the recorder immediately brings me back to that moment. The thoughts that must have gone through my daughter's head make me very upset. I have not seen the rake since he ruined my life, but I know that he has been in my room while I slept, and I know and fear that one night I'll wake up to see him staring at me. Okay, so that is the rake creepypasta. I have some pretty mixed feelings. First of all, it's not immediately a bad creepypasta, because it doesn't fall into a lot of the common tropes of old creepypastas involving just needless gore, death, and things like that. It does seem generally a bit good. I feel like the story is a bit weird, not in a bad way, but also, I think it could be better, but it's really interesting because it really preys on the fear of having something watching you at night. There's also the whole thing about this image, which came out around the same time as this, completely unrelated to it, and on actual news stations, and it matches some of the descriptions of the rake, meaning people thought, what if the rake is a real thing? And that's one of the things with creepypastas. People try and get you to believe that they're real, and that works sometimes, especially when there's an image like that. But yeah, out of creepypastas, I'd give this a 5.6 out of 10. Eyeless Jack. Hello, my name is Mitch. I'm here to tell you guys about an experience I had. I don't know if it was paranormal or whatever, stupid words people use to describe supernatural phenomenon, but after that thing visited me, I believe in the paranormal trash now. A week after I moved in with my brother, Edwin, after the house was foreclosed, I finished unpacking. Edwin liked the idea of me moving in, since we had not seen each other for 10 years. I was excited. I soon fell asleep after I moved in. After that first week, I heard rustling noises coming from the outside about 1 in the morning. I thought it was a raccoon, so I ignored it and tried to fall asleep. The next morning, I told Edwin about it. He agreed. The next night, however, I thought I heard my own window open and a loud thump as if someone entered my room. I darted up and looked around my room, but I saw nothing. The next morning, Edwin dropped his coffee cup when he saw me. He held up a nearby mirror, and I saw myself. I had a large gash across my left cheek. After I was rushed to the hospital, my doctor told me that I must have been sleepwalking, but then he showed me something that made my blood turn cold. He lifted up my shirt to reveal a sewn-up incision where my kidneys were. I stared into his eyes, mine widening. You somehow lost your left kidney last night, my doctor told me. We don't know how, though. Sorry, Mitch. The next night was my breaking point. Around midnight, I woke up to see a truly horrifying sight. I was staring face to face with a creature with a black hoodie and dark blue mask with no nose or mouth staring down at me. The thing scared me. The most was that it had no eyes, just empty black sockets. The creature also had some black substance dripping from its sockets. I immediately grabbed a camera on the nearby mantel and took a picture. Immediately after taking the shot, the creature lunged at me and tried to claw open my chest to get to my lungs. I stopped it by kicking it in the face. As I ran out of my room, I grabbed my wallet. I would need the money. I ran out of my brother's house and into the night. I eventually ended up in the woods near Edwin's house and tripped on a rock. I fell unconscious and woke up in the hospital. My doctor, the same one who treated me before, entered the room. I have good news and bad news, Mitch, the doctor started. The good news is that you had minor injuries and your parents are going to pick you up. I sighed with relief. The bad news is that your brother has been killed by something, sort. My parents took me back to Edwin's house to collect my remaining belongings, which I did. Upon entering my room, I was scared. But remaining calm, I grabbed my camera and stopped dead in my tracks. In the hallway leading next to my room, I saw Edwin's body and something small lying next to it. I retrieved it and entered my parents' car, not mentioning Edwin's corpse. I looked at the thing I had picked up and nearly vomited. My stolen half-eaten kidney with a black substance on it. So, my opinions on Eyeless Jack. The main thing I find about it, my main criticism is, what kind of doctor diagnoses someone with missing a kidney and is like, yeah, sorry, you're missing a kidney, and just lets them leave? And then also, the doctor as a character is just so weird. They're so nonchalant about everything. We have good news and bad news. The good news is you don't seem pretty injured. The bad news is your brother's dead. No doctor would, most likely phrase it like that. But yeah, about the actual story, I find it's pretty good. It does lean a bit more heavily into some of those tropes. I do kind of like the design of Eyeless Jack. To be fair, in the little bit of art that you can see I'm doing on screen right now, I kind of changed up their design, also because I had only seen the picture at the time of drawing that, and not actually read much of the creepypasta. But I think they are a pretty good creepypasta. Not the best, but decent, and I would give them probably a 5.2 out of 10. Jeff the Killer. Excerpt from a local newspaper. Ominous unknown killer is still at large. After weeks of unexplained murders, the ominous unknown killer is still on the rise. After little evidence has been found, a young boy states that he survived one of the killer's attacks and bravely tells his story. I had a bad dream and woke up in the middle of the night, says the boy. I saw that for some reason my window was open, even though I remember it being closed right before I went to bed. I got up and shut it once more. Afterwards, I simply crawled under my covers and tried to get back to sleep. That's when I had a strange feeling, like someone was watching me. I looked up and nearly jumped out of my bed. There was a little ray of light illuminating from between my curtains. There was a pair of two eyes. These weren't regular eyes, they were dark, ominous eyes. They were bordered in black and just plain out terrified me. That's when I saw his mouth, a long, horrendous smile that made every hair on my body stand up. The figure stood there, watching me. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he said it, a simple phrase, but in a way that only a madman could speak. He said, "Go to sleep." I let out a scream, and that's what sent him at me. He pulled a knife, aiming at my heart. He jumped on top of my bed. I fought him back, and I kicked, I punched, I rolled around, I tried to knock him off of me. That's when my dad busted in. The man threw the knife. It went into my dad's shoulder. The man probably would have finished him off if one of the neighbors hadn't alerted the police. The man turned and ran down the hallway. I heard it smash like glass breaking. As I came out of my room, I saw the window and was pointing towards the back door of my house. I looked out at it to see him vanish into the distance. I can tell you one thing, I will never forget that face, those cold, evil eyes and that psychotic smile. They will never leave my head. Police are still on the look for this man. If you see anyone that fits the description of this boy, please contact your local police department. Jeff and his family had just moved into a new neighborhood. His dad had gotten a promotion at work, and they thought it would be the best to live in one of those fancy neighborhoods. Jeff and his brother Liu couldn't complain, though. A new, better house. What was not to love? They were getting unpacked. One of their neighbors came by. "Hello," she said. "I'm Barbara. I live across the street from you. Well, I just wanted to introduce myself. And to introduce my sons." She turns around and calls her sons over. Billy, these are our new neighbors. Billy said hi and ran back to play in his yard. Well, said Jeff's mom, I'm Margaret. This is my husband Peter and my two sons, Jeff and Liu. They each introduced themselves, and when Barbara invited them to her son's birthday party, Jeff and his brother were about to object when their mother said that they would love to. When Jeff and his family were done packing, Jeff went up to his mom. Mom, why'd you have to invite us to some kid's party? If you haven't noticed, I'm not some dumb kid. Jeff, said his mother, we just moved in here. We should show that we want to spend time with our neighbor. Now, we are going to that party, and that's final. Jeff started to talk, but stopped himself, knowing that he couldn't do anything. Whenever his mom said something, it was final. He walked up to his room and plopped down on his bed. He sat there looking at the ceiling, and suddenly he got a weird feeling. Not so much pain, but a weird feeling. He dismissed it as just something, just a random feeling. He heard his mother call him down to get his stuff, and he walked down to get it. The next day, Jeff walked downstairs to get breakfast and got ready for school. As he sat there eating his breakfast, he once again got that feeling. This time it was stronger. It gave him slight tugging pain, but once again he dismissed it. As he and Liu finished breakfast, they walked down to the bus stop and sat there waiting for the bus. And then all of a sudden, some kid on a skateboard jumped over them, only inches above their laps. They both jumped back in surprise. Hey, what the hell? The kid landed and turned back to them. He kicked his skateboard up and caught it with his hands. The kid seemed to be about 12, 1 year younger than Jeff. He wears an Aeropostale shirt and ripped blue jeans. Well, 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 looks like we've got some new meat. Suddenly 2 other kids appeared. One was super skinny and the other was huge. Well, since you're new here, I'd like to introduce ourselves. Over there is Keith. Jeff and Liu looked over at the skinny kid. He had a dopey face that you would expect a sidekick to have. And here's Troy. They looked over at the fat kid. Oh, talked about a tub of lard. This kid looked like he hadn't exercised since he was crawling. And I, said the first kid, am Randy. Now, for all the kids in this neighborhood, there's a small price for bus fare, if you catch my drift. Leo stood up ready to punch the lights out of this kid's eyes. One of his friends pulled a knife on him and tisk, tisk, tisk. I hope you'd be more cooperative. It seems we must do this the hard way. The kid walked up to Leo and took his wallet out of his pocket. Jeff got that feeling again. Now it was truly strong, a burning sensation. He stood up, but Liu gestured him to sit down. Jeff ignored him and walked up to the kid. Listen here, you little punk. Give back my bro's wallet or else. Randy put the wallet in his pocket and pulled out his own knife. Oh, and what will you do? Just as he finished the sentence, Jeff popped the kid in the nose. As Randy reached for his face, Jeff grabbed the kid's wrist and broke it. Randy screamed and Jeff grabbed the knife from his hand. Troy and Keith rushed to Jeff, but Jeff was too quick. He threw Randy to the ground. Keith lashed out at him, but Jeff ducked and stabbed him in the arm. Keith dropped his knife and fell to the ground screaming. Troy rushed him too, but Jeff didn't even need a knife. He just punched Troy straight in the stomach, and Troy went down. As he fell, he puked all over. Liu could do nothing but look in amazement at Jeff. Jeff, how'd you... That was all he said. They saw the bus coming and knew that they'd be blamed for the whole thing, so they started running as fast as they could. As they ran, they looked back and they saw the bus driver rushing over to Randy and the others. As Jeff and Liu made it to school, they didn't dare tell what happened. All they did was sit and listen. Liu just thought of that as his brother beating up a few kids, but Jeff knew it was more. It was something scary. As he got that feeling, he knew how powerful it was. The urge to just hurt someone. He didn't like how it sounded, but he couldn't keep feeling happy. He felt the strange feeling go away and stay away for the entire day of school, even as he walked home due to the whole thing near the bus stop. And now he probably wouldn't be taking the bus anymore. He felt happy. When he got home, his parents asked him how his day was. He said in a somewhat ominous voice, "It was a wonderful day." Next morning, he heard a knock at his front door. He walked down to find 2 police officers at the door, and his mother looking back at him with an angry look. Jeff, these officers tell me that you attacked 3 kids, and it wasn't even regular fighting, and that they were stabbed. Stabbed, son. Jeff's gaze fell to the floor, showing his mother it was true. Mom, they were the ones who pulled the knives on me and Liu. Son, said one of the cops, we found 3 kids, 2 stabbed, 1 having a bruise on his stomach, and we have witnesses proving that you fled the scene. Now what does that tell us? Jeff knew it was no use. He could say him and Liu had been attacked, but there was no proof it was not them who attacked first. They couldn't say that they weren't fleeing, because truth be told, they were, so Jeff couldn't defend himself or Liu. Son, call down your brother. Jeff couldn't do it since he was the one who beat up all the kids. Sir, it was me. I was the one who beat up the kids. Liu tried to hold me back, but he couldn't stop me. The cop looked at his partner, and they both nodded. Well, kid, looks like a year in juvie. Wait, says Liu. They all looked at him to see him holding a knife. The officers pulled their guns and locked them on Liu. It was me. I beat up those little punks. I have the marks to prove it. He lifted up his sleeves to reveal cuts and bruises, as if he was in a struggle. Son, just put the knife down, said the officer. Liu held up the knife and dropped it to the ground. He put his hands up and walked over to the cops. No, Leo, it was me. I did it. Jeff had tears running down his face. Huh, poor bro. Trying to take the blame for what I did. Well, take me away. The police led Leo out to the patrol car. Liu, tell them it was me. Tell them I was the one who beat up those kids. Jeff's mother put her hands on his shoulder. Jeff, please, you don't have to lie. We know it's Liu. You can stop. Jeff watched helplessly as the cop car speeds off with Liu inside. A few minutes later, Jeff's dad pulls into the driveway, seeing Jeff's face and knowing something was wrong. Son, what is it? Jeff couldn't answer. His vocal cords were strained from crying. Instead, Jeff's mother walked his father inside to break the bad news to him, as Jeff wept in the driveway. After an hour or so, Jeff walked back into the house, seeing that his parents were both shocked, sad, and disappointed. He couldn't look at them. He couldn't see how they thought of Leo, and when it was his fault, he just went to sleep, trying to get the whole thing off his mind. 2 days went by with nothing. No word from Leo at JDC. No friends to hang out with, nothing but sadness and guilt. That is until Saturday, when Jeff was woken up by his mother with a happy, sunshiny face. Jeff, it's the day, she said as she opened up the curtains and let light flood into his room. What's today? Asked Jeff as he stirs awake. Why, it's Billy's party. He is now fully awake. Mom, you're joking, right? You don't expect me to go to some kid's party after... There was a long pause. Jeff, we both know what happened. I think this party could be the thing that brightens up the past days. Now get dressed. Jeff's mother walked out of the room and downstairs to get ready for herself. He fought himself to get up. He picked out a random shirt and a pair of jeans and walked downstairs. He saw his mother and father all dressed up. His mother was in a dress and his father in a suit. He thought, why would they ever wear such fancy clothes to a kid's party? Son, is that all you're going to wear? Said Jeff's mom. Better than wearing too much, he said. His mother pushed down the feeling to yell at him and hit him with a smile. Now, Jeff, we may be overdressed, but this is how you go about if you want to make a good impression, said his father. Jeff grunted and went back up to his room. I don't have any fancy clothes, he yelled downstairs. Just pick something out, called his mother. He looked around in his closet for what he could call fancy. Found a pair of black dress pants that he had for special occasions, and an undershirt. He couldn't find a shirt to go with it. He looked around and found only striped and patterned shirts, none of which would go with dress pants. Finally, he found a white hoodie and put it on. You're wearing that? They both said. His mother looked at her watch. Oh, no time to change. Let's just go, she said as she herded Jeff and his father out the door. They crossed the streets over to Barbara and Billy's house. They knocked on the door, and at it appeared Barbara, just like his parents, way overdressed. As they walked inside, all Jeff could see were adults, no kids. The kids are out in the yard, Jeff. How about you go meet some of them, said Barbara. Jeff walked outside to a yard full of kids. They were running around in weird cowboy costumes and shooting each other with plastic guns. You might as well be standing in a Toys R Us. Suddenly, a kid came up to him and handed him a toy gun and hat. Hey, wanna play? He said. Aw, no, kid, I'm way too old for this stuff. The kid looked at him with a weird puppy dog face. Please, said the kid. Fine, said Jeff. He put the hat on and started to pretend to shoot at the kids. At first he thought it was totally ridiculous, but then he started to actually have fun. It might not have been super cool, but it was the first time he had done something that took his mind off Liu. So he played with the kids for a while until he heard a noise, a weird rolling noise. Then it hit him. Randy, Troy, and Keith all jumped over the fence on their skateboards. Jeff dropped the fake gun and ripped off the hat. Randy looked at Jeff with a burning hatred. Hello, Jeff, is it? He said. I think we have some unfinished business. Jeff saw his bruised nose. I think we're even. I beat the crap out of you, and you got my brother sent to JDC. Randy got an angry look in his eyes. Oh no, I don't go for even. I go for winning. You may have kicked our asses that one day, but not today. As he said that, Randy rushed at Jeff. They both fell to the ground. Randy punched Jeff in the nose, and Jeff grabbed him by the ears and headbutted him. Jeff pushed Randy off him, and both rose to their feet. Kids were screaming and parents were running out of the house. Troy and Keith both pulled guns out of their pockets. "No one interrupts or guts will fly," they said. Randy pulled a knife on Jeff and stabbed it into his shoulder. Jeff screamed and fell to his knees. Randy started kicking him in the face. After 3 kicks, Jeff grabbed his foot and twists it, causing Randy to fall to the ground. Jeff stood up and walked towards the back door. Troy grabbed him. "Need some help?" He picks up Jeff by the back of the collar and throws him through the patio door. As Jeff tries to stand, he is kicked down to the ground. Randy repeatedly starts kicking Jeff until he starts coughing up blood. "Come on, Jeff, fight me!" He picks up Jeff and throws him into the kitchen. Randy sees a bottle of vodka on the counter and smashes the glass over Jeff's head. "Fight!" He throws Jeff back to the living room. "Come on, Jeff, look at me." Jeff glances up, his face riddled with blood. "I was the one who got your brother sent to JDC, and now you're just gonna sit there and let him rot up there for a whole year? You should be ashamed." Jeff starts to get up. "Oh, finally, you stand and fight." Jeff is now on his feet, blood and vodka on his face. Once again, he gets that strange feeling, which he hasn't felt in a while. "Finally, he's up," says Randy and runs at Jeff. That's when it happened. Something inside Jeff snapped. His psyche destroyed. All rational thinking is gone. All he can do is kill. He grabs Randy and pile drives him to the ground. He gets on top of him and punches him straight in the heart. The punch causes Randy's heart to stop as Randy gasps for breath. Jeff hammers down on him, punch after punch. Blood gushes from Randy's body until he takes one final breath and dies. Everyone is looking at Jeff now. The parents, the kids, the crying kids, even Troy and Keith, although they easily break their gaze and point their guns at Jeff. Jeff sees the guns trained on him and runs for the stairs. As he runs, Troy and Keith let out fire on him, each shot missing. Jeff runs up the stairs. He hears Troy and Keith follow him up behind. As they let out their final rounds of bullets, Jeff ducks into a bathroom, grabs the towel rack and rips it off the wall. Troy and Keith race in, knives ready. Troy swings his knife at Jeff, who backs away and bangs into the towel rack. Into Troy's face. Troy goes down hard, and all that's left is Keith. He is more agile than Troy, though. He ducks when Jeff swings the towel rack. He dropped the knife and grabbed Jeff by the neck. He pushed him into the wall. A thing of bleach fell down off of the top shelf. It burnt both of them as they started to scream. Jeff wiped it out of his eyes as best as possible. He pulled back the towel rack and swung it straight into Keith's head. As he lay there bleeding to death, he let out an ominous smile. "What's so funny?" asked Jeff. Keith pulled out a lighter and switched it. "What's so funny," he said, "is that you're covered in bleach and alcohol." Jeff's eyes widened as Keith threw the lighter at him. Soon the flames made contact with him. The flames ignited the alcohol and the vodka. While the alcohol burnt him, the bleach bleached his skin. Jeff let out a terrible screech as he caught on fire. He tried to roll out of the fire, but it had no use. The alcohol made him a walking inferno. He ran down the hall and fell down the stairs. Everybody started screaming as they saw Jeff, now a man on fire, dropped to the ground. Nearly dead, the last thing Jeff saw was his mother and the other parents trying to extinguish the flame. That's when he passed out. When Jeff woke, he had a cast wrapped around his face. He couldn't see anything, but felt a cast on his shoulder, stitches all over his body. He tried to stand up, but realized that there was a tube in his arm. When he tried to get up, he fell out, and a nurse rushed in. "I don't think you can get out of bed just yet," she said, and put him back in bed and reinserted the tube. Jeff sat there with no vision, no idea of what his surroundings were. Finally, after hours, he heard his mother. "Honey, are you okay?" she asked. Jeff couldn't answer, though. His face was covered. He was unable to speak. "Oh, honey, I have great news. After all the witnesses told the police that Randy confessed of trying to attack you, they decided to let Liu go." This made Jeff almost bolt up, stopping halfway, remembering the tube coming out of his arm. "He'll be out by tomorrow, and then you two will be able to be together again." Jeff's mother hugs Jeff and says her goodbyes. The next couple of weeks were those where Jeff was visited by his family. Then came the days where his bandages were to be removed. His family members were all there to see it, what he would look like. As the doctors unwrapped the bandages of Jeff's face, everyone on the edge of their seats, they waited until the last bandage holding the cover over his face was almost removed. "Let's hope for the best," said the doctor. He quickly pulls the cloth, letting the rest fall from Jeff's face. Jeff's mother screams at the sight of his face. Liu and Jeff's dad stare awestruck at his face. What happened to my face?" Jeff said. He rushed out of bed and ran to the bathroom. He looked in the mirror and saw the cause of the distress. His face, it was horrible. His lips burnt a deep shade of red. His face turned into a pure white color. and his hair singed from brown to black. He slowly put his hands to his face. It had a sort of leathery feel to it now. He looked back at his family and then back at the mirror. "Jeff," said Leo, "it's not that bad." "Not that bad," said Jeff. "It's perfect." His family were equally surprised. Jeff started laughing uncontrollably. His parents noticed that his left eye and hand were twitching. Jeff, are you okay?" "Okay, I've never felt more happy. Look at me. This face goes perfectly with me." He couldn't stop laughing. He stroked his face, feeling it, looking at it in the mirror. What caused it? Well, you may recall that when Jeff was fighting Randy, something in his mind, his sanity, snapped, and now he was left a crazy killing machine. That his parents didn't know. "Doctor," said Jeff's mom, "is my son all right? You know, in the head?" "Oh yes, this behavior is typical in patients that have taken very large amounts of painkillers. If his behavior doesn't change in a few weeks, bring him back here and we'll give him a psychological test." "Oh, thank you, Doc." Jeff's mother went over to Jeff. "Jeff, sweetie, it's time to go." Jeff looks away from the mirror. His face still formed into a crazy smile. "Okay." His mother took him by the shoulder and took him to get his clothes. "This is what came in," said the lady at the desk. Jeff's mom looked down to see the black dress pants and the white hoodie her son wore. Now they were clean of blood and now stitched together. Jeff's mother led him into his room and made him put his clothes on. Then they left, not knowing that this was their final day of life. Later that night, Jeff's mother woke to the sound coming from the bathroom. It sounded as if someone was crying. She slowly walked over to see what it was. Then she looked at the bathroom and saw a horrendous sight. Jeff had taken a knife and carved a smile into his cheeks. "Jeff, what are you doing?" asked his mother. Jeff looked over at his mother. "I couldn't keep smiling, Mommy. It hurt after a while, but now I can smile forever." Jeff's mother noticed his eyes ringed in black. "Jeff, your eyes!" His eyes seemingly never closed. "I couldn't see my face. I got tired and my eyes started to close. I burned out the eyelids so I could see myself forever, my new face." Jeff's mother slowly started backing away. Her son was going insane. "What's wrong, Mommy? Aren't I beautiful?" "Yes, son," she said. "Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Let me go get Daddy so he can see your face." She ran into the room and shook Jeff's dad from his sleep. "Honey, get the gun. She stopped as she saw Jeff in the doorway holding a knife. "Mommy, you lied." That's the last thing they hear as Jeff rushes them with the knife, gutting the both of them. His brother Liu woke up, startled by some noise. He didn't hear anything else, so he just shut his eyes and tried to go back to sleep. That was when he was on the border of slumber. He got the strangest feeling that someone was watching him. He looked up before Jeff's hand covered his mouth, and he slowly raised a knife ready to plunge it into Liu. Liu thrashed here and there, trying to escape Jeff's grip. "Shh," Jeff said. "Just go to sleep." Okay, my opinions on Jeff the Killer. So, I feel like it's a decent creepypasta. It definitely has a lot of flaws. There's kind of a few funny things I mentioned that got cut out while I was recording. You can see those at the very end of the video. There's going to be like a little section of all the weird things that happened while I was recording this. A lot of them did. A lot of weird things happened. But in my opinion, I feel like it's a decent creepypasta that falls into the trap of a lot of the, basically things that older creepypastas always did. It's got unnecessary violence. The ending isn't too good. There doesn't seem to be much motive for Jeff the Killer other than just, he's insane. But, yeah, there's definitely, if you want a much longer and more in-depth deep dive into Jeff the Killer, just go find Pastra's Jeff the Killer video. It'll tell you everything you need to know. To be fair, that's where a lot of my opinions of Jeff the Killer came from. So I don't want to just repeat everything they said, but here's you can just go check out their video. It's linked in the description and right here. But overall, I would give it about a 5.2 out of ratings because it's not that good and it's not that bad. Ben Drowned. Post number 1, September 7th, 2010. Okay, I need your help with this. This is not a copy pasta. It's a long read, but I feel like my safety or well-being could very well depend on this. It's video game related, specifically Majora's Mask, and is the creepiest shit that has ever happened to me in my entire life. Having said that, I have recently moved into my dorm room starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64. I was stoked, to say the least. I could finally play all those old games of my youth that I hadn't touched in at least a decade. His Nintendo 64 came with one yellow controller and a rather shoddy copy of Super Smash Bros. Well, beggars can't be choosers. Needless to say, it didn't take too long till I became bored of beating level 9 CPUs. That weekend I decided to drive around a few neighborhoods about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up local garage sales, hoping to score on some good deals from ignorant parents. I ended up picking a copy of Pokemon Stadium, GoldenEye, Fuck Yeah, F-Zero, two other controllers for $2. Satisfied, I began to drive out in the neighborhood when one last house caught my attention. I still had no idea why I did it. There were no cars, and there was only one table set up with some random junk on it. But something sort of drew me there. I usually trust my gut on these things, so I got out of the car and greeted an old man. His outward appearance was, for lack of a better word, displeasing. It was odd. If you asked me to tell you why I thought that, I couldn't really pinpoint anything. There was just something about him that put me on edge. I can't explain it. All I can tell you is if it wasn't the middle of the afternoon and there wasn't other people within shouting distance, I would have not even thought of approaching this man. He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked what I was looking for. Immediately I noticed that he must have been blind in one of his eyes. His right eye had that glazed over look. I forced myself to look to his left eye. Trying not to offend, I asked him if he had any old video games. I was already wondering how I could politely excuse myself from the situation when he told me he had no idea what a video game was. But to my surprise, he then said he had a few old ones in a box. He assured me he'd be back in a jiffy, and turned to head back to the garage. I watched him hobble away. I couldn't help but notice what he was selling on his table. Littered across it was rather peculiar paintings, various artworks that looked like ink blots that a psychiatrist might show you. Curious, I looked through them. It was obvious that no one was visiting this guy's garage sale. They weren't aesthetically pleasing. As I came to the last one, for some reason it looked almost like Majora's Mask. Same heart-shaped body with little spikes protruding outwards. Initially I just thought it was that, since I was secretly hoping to find the game at these garage sales. Some Freudian bullshit was projecting itself into the ink blots. But given the events that happened afterward, I'm not so sure now. I should have asked the man about it. I wish I did ask the man about it. After staring at the Majora-shaped blot, I looked up at the old man, and he was suddenly there again, arm's length in front of me, smiling at me. I'll admit I jumped out of reflex and laughed nervously as he handed me a Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was the standard gray color, except that someone had written Majora on the back of it with permanent marker. I got butterflies in my stomach when I realized what a coincidence this was. I asked him how much he wanted for it. The old man smiled and told me I could have it for free, that it used to belong to a kid about my age who didn't live here anymore. There was something weird about the way he phrased that, but I didn't really pay any attention to it. I was too caught up in finding this game and getting it for free. I reminded myself to be a bit skeptical, since this looked like a pretty shady cartridge. There was no guarantee it would work, but then the optimist inside me interjected. Maybe it was just some kind of beta version or pirated version of the game. That was all I needed to be back on Cloud 9. I thanked the man, and he smiled at me and wished me well, saying, "Goodbye then." At least that's what it sounded like. All the way in the car ride home, I had a nagging doubt that he had said something else. My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game. To my surprise, it worked just fine, and there was one save file simply named Ben. "Goodbye, Ben," he was saying. "Goodbye, Ben." I felt bad for the man. Obviously a grandparent who is obviously going senile. For some reason or another, I reminded him of his grandson, Ben. Out of curiosity, I looked at the save file, eyeballing it. I could tell you that he was pretty far into the game. He had almost all the masks, 3/4 of the boss's remains. I noticed that he had used an owl statue to save his game. He was on day 3 by the stone tower temple with hardly an hour left before the moon would crash. I remember thinking that it would be a shame that he had come so close to beating the game but never finished it. I made a new file named Link out of tradition and started the game, ready to relive my childhood for such a shady looking cartridge. I was impressed how smoothly it ran. Literally just like a retail copy of the game, save for a few minor hiccups here and there, like textures being where they shouldn't be and random flashes of cutscenes at odd intervals, but nothing too bad. However, the only thing that was a little unnerving was that at times the NPCs would call me Link, and at other times they would call me Ben. Figured it was just a bug, a fluke in the programming causing our files to get mixed up or something. It did kind of creep me out after a while, although it was around after I had beaten Woodfall Temple and regrettably went into the save files and deleted Ben. I had intended to preserve the file just out of respect for the game's original owner. It's not like I needed two files anyway. Hoping that would solve the problem. Did, and it didn't. Now NPCs wouldn't call me anything. Where my name should have been in the dialogue, there was just a blank space. My save file was still named Link, though. Frustrated, and with homework to do, I pulled the game down for a day. I started playing it again last night, getting the lens of truth and working my way towards completing the Snowhead Temple. Now, some of you more hardcore Majora's Mask players know about the fourth day glitch. For those who don't know, you can Google it, but the gist is right as the clock is about to hit 0000 on the final day, you can talk to the astronomer and look through the telescope. If you get the timing right, the countdown disappears and you essentially have another day to finish whatever you were doing. Deciding to do the glitch to try and finish Snowhead Temple, I happened to get it right on the first try, and the time counter at the bottom disappeared. However, when I pressed B to exit the telescope, instead of being greeted by the astronomer, I found myself in the Majora boss fight room at the end of the game. Trippy boxed in area. Staring at the Skull Kid hovering above me, there was no sound, just him floating in the air, and the background music, which was regular for the area, but still creepy. Immediately, my palms began to sweat. This was definitely not normal. Skull Kid never appeared here. I tried moving around the area, but no matter where I went, Skull Kid would always be facing me, looking at me, not saying anything. Nothing would happen, though, and this kept up for about 60 minutes. I thought the game had bugged or something, but I was beginning to doubt that very much. I was about to reach for the reset button when text appeared on my screen. You're not sure why, but apparently you've had a reservation. I instantly recognized the text. You get that message when you get a room key from Anuju in the Stockpot Inn. But why was it playing here? I refused to entertain the notion that it was almost the game was trying to communicate with me. I started to navigate the room again, testing to see if it was some sort of trigger to enable me to interact with something here. Then I realized how stupid it was, even to think that someone could reprogram the game like this was inserted. Sure enough, 15 seconds later, another message appeared on the screen, and again, like the first one, it was already a pre-existing phrase. Go to the lair of the temple's boss? Yes or no? I paused for a second, contemplating what I should press and how the game would react. When I realized I couldn't select no, taking a deep breath, I pressed yes, and the screen faded to white, with the words "Dawn of a New Day" in the sub's text, I, beneath it. Where I was ported to filled me with the most intense sense of dread and impending fear I had ever experienced. The only way I could describe it was having the feeling of inexplicable depression on a profound scale. I am normally not a depressed person, but the way I felt there was a feeling that I didn't even know existed. Such a twisted, powerful presence seemed to wash over me. I appeared in some kind of weird Twilight Zone version of the clock tower. I walked out of the clock tower, as you normally do, starting from day one, only to find that all the inhabitants were gone. Usually with the fourth day glitch, you can still find guards and the dog that runs around outside the tower. This time they were all gone. What replaced them was the ominous feeling that there was something out there in the same area as me, and that it was watching me. I had 4 hearts to my name and the hero's bow, but at this point, I wasn't even concerned for my avatar. I felt that I personally was in some kind of danger. Perhaps the most chilling thing was the music. It was the Song of Healing, ripped straight from the game itself, but played in reverse. It got louder, building up, as if you would expect something to pop out at you, but nothing ever did. The constant loop began to wear on my mental state. Every now and then you would hear the faint laugh of the happy masked salesman in the background, just quiet enough so that I wasn't sure if I was hearing things, but just loud enough to keep me determined to find him. I looked in all 4 zones of the clock tower, only to find nothing. No one. Textures were missing. West Clocktown had me walking on air. The entire area felt broken, hopelessly broken, as the reverse Song of Healing repeated for what must have been the 50th time. I just remember standing in the middle South Clocktown, realizing I had never felt so alone in a video game before. As I walked through the ghost town, I didn't know whether it was the combination of out-of-place textures and the atmosphere or the haunting melody of a once peaceful and soothing song being butchered and distorted. But it was but I was literally on the verge of tears and had no idea why. I hardly ever cry. Something had gripped me here with this powerful sense of depression that was both foreign and crippling. I tried leaving Clock Tower, but every time I attempted to zone out, the screen would fade to black and I would just zone into another part of Clock Town. I tried playing my ocarina. I just wanted to escape. I did not want to be here. But every time I played the Song of Time or the Song of Soaring, it would only say, "Your notes echo far, but nothing ever happens." By this point, it was obvious the game did not want me to leave, but I had no idea why it was keeping me here. I didn't want to go inside the buildings. I felt that I would be vulnerable to whatever I was terrified of. I don't know why, but I came up with the idea that maybe if I drowned myself at the laundry pool, I could spawn somewhere else to leave this place. As I zoned in and ran towards the pool, that's when it happened. Link grabbed his head, and the screen flashed for a brief moment of the happy masked salesman smiling at me. Not Link, me, with the Skull Kid's screen playing in the background. When the screen returned, I was just staring at the Link statue from playing the Song of Elegy of Emptiness. I screamed as the thing stared back at me with that haunting facial expression. I turned around and ran out and backed into the South Clock Tower. And to my horror, the fucking statue followed me. The only thing I can compare to it is like the weeping angels from Doctor Who. Every so often, at random intervals, the animation would play of the statue appearing behind me. It was like the thing was chasing me, or I don't even want to fucking say it, but haunting me. By this point, I was on the verge of hysterics. But not once did even the thought of turning off the console occur to me. I don't know why. I was so wrapped up in it. The terror felt so real. I tried to shake the statue, but it would literally appear right behind me every single time. Link began to make weird animations. I had never seen him do this before. He would flail his arms around or spasm randomly, and the screen would cut to the happy masked salesman smiling again for a brief moment before I was face to face with that fucking statue. I ended up running into the Sword Master's dojo. I don't know why, but in my panic I just wanted some kind of assurance that I wasn't alone here. In my dismay, I found no one. But as I turned to leave, the statue cornered me in the cubby in the back. I tried to attack me with my sword, but to no avail. Confused, I backed into a corner. I just stared at the statue, waiting for it to kill me. Suddenly, the screen flashed again with the happy masked salesman. Link turned to face me on my screen, standing upright, mirroring the statue, looking at me along with his copy, literally staring at me. Whatever was left of the fourth wall was completely shattered as I ran out of the dojo, terrified. Suddenly, the game warped me into an underground tunnel, and the reverse Song of Healing queued up again. It was a brief moment of rest before the statue started appearing again behind me, this time aggressively. I could only take a few steps before with someone behind me. Again, I hurriedly made my way out of the tunnel and appeared in the southern clock tower. As I ran aimlessly in sheer panic, suddenly a red dead screamed, and the screen faded to black as dawn of a new day, and I appeared again. The screen faded in, and I was standing on the top of the clock tower, the Skull Kid hovering over me, again silent. I looked up and the moon was back, looming just meters above my head. The Skull Kid was just staring at me hauntingly with that fucking mask. A new song was playing, the Stone Tower temple theme played in reverse, some sort of desperate attempt. I equipped my bow and fired off a shot at the Skull Kid. It actually hit him and played the animation of him reeling back. I fired again, and on the third arrow a text box appeared saying, "That won't do you any good. He." I was picked off the ground and levitated upwards onto my back. Link screamed as he burst into flames, instantly killing him. I jumped when this happened. I had never seen this move used by anyone in the game, and Skull Kid himself didn't have any moves. As the death screen played, my lifeless body still burning, the Skull Kid laughed and the screen faded to black, only to have me reappear in the same place. I decided to charge him, but the same thing happened. Link's body was lifted off the ground by some unknown force and immediately burst into flames again, killing him. This time, during the death screen, the faint sounds of the reverse Song of Healing could be heard. On my third and final try, I noticed there was no music playing this time, and there was just eerie silence. I remembered that original encounter with Skull Kid. You were supposed to use the ocarina to either travel back in time or summon giants. I attempted to play the Song of Time, but before I could hit the last note, Link's body once again horrifically exploded into flames, and he died. As the death screen neared its end, it began to chug as if the cartridge was trying to process a lot of something. When the screen came to, the same scene was as the first 3 times, except for this time, Link was lying on the ground, dead in position. I had never seen the game do this before. His head was tilted towards the camera, with Skull Kid floating above him. I couldn't move, I couldn't press any buttons. All I could do was just stare at Link's dead body. After around 30 seconds of this, the game simply faded out, showing a message, "You've just met a terrible fate, haven't you?" before kicking you out to the title screen. Upon getting back into the title screen and starting up again, I noticed my save file was no longer there. Instead of Link, it was replaced with Your Turn. Your Turn had 3 hearts, 0 masks, and no items. I selected Your Turn, and immediately I was returned to the clock tower rooftop scene of my dead Link and Skull Kid hovering over, with Skull Kid's laugh looping again. I quickly hit the reset button, and when the game booted up again, there was one more save file added below Your Turn, entitled Ben, right back where it was before I deleted it, at the Stone Tower Temple with the moon almost crashing. I turned the game off at that point. I'm not superstitious, but this was way too fucked up even for me. I haven't played it at all today. Hell, I didn't even get any sleep last night. I kept hearing this reverse song of healing music in my head, and I just remember the sense of dread I felt exploring the clock town. I drove back to the old man's house today to ask him some questions with a buddy of mine. No way I was going to do this alone, only to find that there was a for sale sign in the front of the yard. When I rang the door, no one was home. So now I'm back here writing this down with the rest of my thoughts, recording what happened. Sorry if some of this has grammatical errors or whatnot. I'm running on no sleep here and terrified of this game. Even more so that I relived it a second time writing this all down. But I feel like there's still more to it than meets the eye. There's something calling me to investigate this further, and I think Ben is something in this equation. But I don't know what. And if I could get a hold of the old man, then I would be able to find some answers. But I need another day to recuperate before tackling this game again. I feel like it's already taken a toll on my sanity. But next time I do this, I'm going to be recording my footage all the way through. The idea to record only came up towards me to the end, so you get to see the last few minutes of what I saw, including the Skull Kid and the elegy statue. You guys might have, or hopefully listen to your ideas and theories to help me shed some light on how this happened, or maybe things I should try. I think I'm going to play Ben's file tomorrow and see what happens. Maybe I'm supposed to do that all along. I don't believe in paranormal shit, but this is a little fucked up. Maybe even this Ben guy is really just a really good programmer / hacker. I don't know what to think about the alternatives if he isn't. That's the end of the copy-paste. I'm hoping that maybe this isn't some kind of running gag the developers had, that other people have gotten gag or hacked copies of the game like this. This just really scares me. Post 2, September 8th, 2010. I'm going to post what happened and a link to the video footage, but last night everything got too real for me. I think I'm done messing around with this. I passed out pretty much immediately after making that thread, but last night, that elegy of emptiness statue, I had a dream about it. I dreamed that it was following me in my dream, that I would be minding my own business when I'd feel my neck hair standing up on end. I would turn around to that thing, that horrible lifeless statue would be staring at me with those empty eyes right at me, merely inches away. In my dream, I can remember calling it Ben, and never before had I had a dream that I could remember so vividly. But the important thing is that I did get some sleep, I suppose. Today, putting off playing the game as long as I could, I drove back up to that neighborhood to see if the old man came back. As I expected, the car was still gone and no one was home. As I was walking back to my car, the man next door mowing the grass killed the power to his lawnmower and asked me if I was looking for someone. I told him I was looking for the old man that had lived here, to which he told me what I had already knew. He was moving. Trying a different avenue, I asked if the old man had any family or relatives I could talk to. I discovered the old man had never been married, nor did he have any children or grandchildren through adoption. Starting to become worried, I asked one final question, one that I should have asked from the beginning. Who is Ben? The man's expression turned grim, and I learned that 4 doors down, around 8 years ago, April 23rd, the man informed me that it was on the same day as his anniversary. That's how he knew the specific date. There was an accident with a young boy named Ben in the neighborhood. Shortly thereafter, his parents moved. Despite any further attempts to talk to the man and to get more information, he wouldn't divulge anything else. I went back and started playing again. I loaded up the game and immediately jumped to the title screen where the mask flies by. The sound that played was not the normal whoosh sound, but it was something much higher pitched. I pressed start, bracing for the worst, but just like 2 nights ago, the files "Your Turn" and "Ben" were displayed. Truth be told, I looked at Ben earlier. It seems to fluctuate between displaying the "I will save" and not. I brought up the Ben file and hesitated for a moment before noticing that the stats were not the same as the original 2 days ago. It seemed like they had already completed the Stone Tower Temple, and this time, summoning my courage, I selected it. I was immediately thrust into complete chaos. Sure enough, I was outside the Stone Tower Temple, about all that was expected. The zone itself wasn't called Stone Tower Temple, but rather Stone, and immediately a dialogue box of complete gibberish that I couldn't make out greeted me. Link's body was distorted. His back was cocked violently to the side, where his posture was permanently disfigured. Link's expression was dull, almost monotonous. He had an expression on his face that I didn't recognize before. It was a blank look, as if he was dead. Link stood there, his body spasmed irregularly back and forth. I examined what had become of my avatar, and then I noticed I had a C button item I had never seen before, some kind of note. But pressing it did nothing. Sounds played back and forth that I didn't recognize from the game, almost demonic in nature. There was some kind of high-pitched yip or some kind of laugh playing in the background. I had all of 2 minutes to take in the environment before another one of those fucking Elegy of Emptiness statues was summoned immediately after I was cut into the Dawn of a New Day screen, except for this time without the I subtext. I was a Deku scrub in Clocktown. This scene would normally play after the first time you traveled back in time. Tattle would say, what just happened? It's as if everything has. But instead of saying started over, she finished her remark in broken text as the laugh of the happy masked salesman played in the background. I was put back in the control of my character, but from a fucked up camera angle. I was looking from behind the door of the clock tower, watching my avatar run around as a Deku scrub. Seeing as I had really no place to go because I couldn't see anything, I begrudgingly went inside the door. There I was greeted by the happy masked salesman, who simply told me, "You've met a terrible fate, haven't you?" before the screen whited out. I was in Termina Field as a human again. I might as well not have been playing the game anymore. I was being warped around and there was no sign of a day clock or anything. I took a moment to get my bearings and look around the field. Immediately I could tell this was not normal. There were no enemies, and a twisted version of the Happy Mask Salesman theme was playing. I decided to run towards Woodfall. I noticed a gathering of 3 figures off to the side, one of them being Epona. As I approached them, to my horror, I saw the Happy Mask Salesman and the Skull Kid and the Elegy of Emptiness statue just standing there. I figured maybe they were bugged out, but by now I told myself I should know better. Nevertheless, I approached them. Carefully, I found the Skull Kid was playing some kind of idle animation on loop. Same with Epona and the Elegy of Emptiness statue. What it was doing all along, just standing there eerily. It was the Happy Mask Salesman that scared me more profoundly than the other 2. He, too, was idle, wearing that shit-eating grin. But wherever I moved, his head slowly turned and followed me. I had not engaged in any dialogue with him, nor was I in combat with him, yet his head still continued to follow my movements. It reminded me of my first encounter with the Skull Kid on top of Clock Tower. I pulled out my ocarina, to which the game played the ding sound when you're supposed to play your ocarina, and I tried a song I haven't played yet, Happy Mask Salesman own song, and this song that had been playing on loop back in day 4, the song Appealing. I finished playing the song, and as I did, an ear-piercing shriek blasted on my TV. The sky immediately started flashing. The Happy Mask Salesman twisted theme song sped up, and intensifying the fear inside me, and Link exploded into flames and died. Three figures stayed lit up during my death screen as they watched my lifeless body burn. I can't describe to you how sudden and terrifying this transition from eerie to terror it was. You're going to have to watch the video if you want to see this firsthand, but it's the same fear that caused me to lose sleep in the last 2 days and started to grip me as I was met with the text, "You've met a terrible fate, haven't you?" for the third time. There had to be some kind of meaning behind that. I had little time to ponder as I was immediately given another small cutscene of transforming into a Zora. I now found myself in the Great Temple Bay. Hesitant but curious to see what the game had in store for me, I slowly made my way towards the beach where I found Epona. I wondered why the game had decided to put me here. Was the game implying she was trying to get a drink? Unable to take the mask off, I decided that riding the seat wasn't the reason she was placed here. Suddenly I realized Epona kept neighing, and the way she was angled made it look like she was trying to signal a point to me off in the distance. It was a hunch, but I dove into a great bay and started swimming. Sure enough, I almost missed it. I found something at the bottom of the ocean. One last Elegy of Emptiness statue. I went down to examine it, and suddenly my Zora started doing choking animations I had never seen a Zora do, which didn't even make sense because Zoras can breathe underwater. Regardless, my character choked to death and died. And again, the statue was the only thing that was highlighted on my death. I didn't respawn this time. I was booted back to the main menu, as if it restarted the console. Ben.wmv. The press start screen was before me. I knew the only reason why it would put me here is because the save files had changed again. Taking a deep breath, I pressed start, and I was right. The new save files told me about Ben. Now it made sense why the statue appeared when I tried to go into the laundry pool. The game must have anticipated how I would try to escape the Day 4 clock town. The two save files told me his fate. As I suspected, Ben was dead. He had drowned. The game obviously isn't through with me. It taunts me with the new save files. It wants me to keep playing. It wants me to go further, but I'm done with this shit. I'm not touching any more of the files. This is already way too horrifying for me, and I don't even believe in the paranormal. But I'm running out of explanations, and why would someone send me this message? I don't understand it. I just get too depressed thinking about this. The footage is up here for those who want to see it and try and analyze it. Maybe there's some kind of coded message in gibberish or something symbolic in it. What I went through, though, I'm too emotionally and mentally drained to fuck with it anymore. Post 3. September 10th, 2010. I know it's early in the morning. I've stayed up all night. I can't sleep. I don't care if people see this. That's not the point. I just want the word to get spread so I don't have to suffer for nothing. I've lost the will to type about this. The less I dwell on this, the better. I think the video just speaks for itself. I did what you guys told me to. I played the Elegy of Emptiness song, the first prompt in the game I was given. But I think that's what the game or Ben. Jesus Christ, I can't even believe that I'm humoring the absurd idea that he exists in the game. Wanted me to do. He's following me now, not just in the game. He's in my dreams. I see him all the time. He's behind my back, just watching me. I haven't gone to any of my classes. I've stayed in my dorm room with the windows closed and the blinds shut. That way I know he can't watch me, but still, it gets to me when I play. When I play, he still can see me. The game is scaring me now. It talked to me for the first time, not just using text that's already in the game, but it spoke to me. Talked to me. It referenced Ben. It talked to me, and I don't know what it means. I don't know what it wants, and I've never wanted this. I just want my old life back. Drowned.wmv. Stuff like this doesn't happen to people like me. I'm just a kid, not even old enough to drink yet. It's not fair. I just want to go home. I just want to see my parents again. I'm so far away from home here at this school. I just want to hug my mom again. I just want to forget this statue's horrible blank face. My original game file is back, just the way I left it before I was gone. I don't want to play anymore. I feel like something bad will happen if I don't, but that's impossible. It's a video game. Haunted or not, it can't hurt me, right? Like, seriously though, it can't, right? That's what I keep telling myself, but every time I think about it, I'm not so sure. Post 4, September 12th, 2010. Let me just clear things up. I know you guys are worried, but Jod Usable is okay. He finished moving out today. Says he's going back home. He's just taking this semester off, and I'm not really sure what's happened. I have a vague idea that you guys probably know more about than I do. I'm Jade Osible's roommate, and obviously I knew something was wrong with him for a few days. He stayed in the room. He fell out of contact with literally all of his friends, and I'm pretty sure he hasn't been and I'm pretty sure he's been eating hardly anything. After the second day, I couldn't stay in there anymore, so I've been crashing at a buddy's place, only coming into my room to get stuff that I need. I've tried talking to him several times, but he would cut me off, keep conversation brief when I asked. I tried talking to him several times, but he would cut me off and keep conversation brief when I asked him about his strange behavior. It was like he was convinced something was hunting him. Yesterday I came in to grab my philosophy book, and he approached me, looking awful, like horrible bags under his eyes. He handed me a flash drive and gave me specific instructions. He told me that he needs me to do one last favor for him. Finally, he explained to me what has been going on. He gave me the account info of his YouTube account and told me that he's getting away from here, that it lured him play it again instead of trying to change things, and that he shouldn't have done that. And to upload the footage and inform people what happened, I told him that he could do it himself, and he got this wild look in his eye and told me that he is never looking at that game again. And that's the last thing he said to me. He never even said bye when his parents came to pick him up. I never even got to meet his parents. Honestly, I can't tell you what happened. When he spoke, it was kind of hard to understand him, and his fucked up appearance really distracted me. On the flash drive, there was the footage of the game last night, a text document with his name and a password for his YouTube. The third document, called thetruth.txt, containing what he had told me were his notes that he had taken. He told me that this meant everything to him, and that I follow his instructions exactly. Normally I wouldn't be so to the letter for a request over a fucking video game, but the way he spoke and the way he looked made me know it was really serious. And I'm gonna honor that. I've had this video since yesterday, but had to have someone help me use Pinnacle. It's not really my fort. After watching it, I had to go back through and look at his other YouTube videos. The video I'm releasing tonight, thetruth.txt, will be released on September 15th, just like he requested. I haven't dared peek at it yet, so this is the first time anyone will be seeing it, and the first time you will see it out of respect for my friend. To answer your questions, no, I haven't tried calling him yet. I think I'll give him a call tomorrow and see if he's okay or not. And he should have gotten back home by now. JDawsable, W.WMV. About the video. In this video, I cut straight to when he loaded into the Ben file in the game. Post 5, September 15th, 2010. Hey guys, JDawsable here. This will be the last time that you will be hearing from me, and this is my final gift to you. These are the notes that I have taken and the realizations I have made. Before I delve into this, I want to thank you for following me and thank you for listening. It feels like the weight of a powerful burden is about to be lifted. By the time you read this, I won't be around anymore. But after spending 4 days with this maddening game, I've begun to understand what's really at play here, and hopefully after reading this, we can ensure this never happens again. There are things that I could not share with you while I was going through this due to the circumstances, to which I'll explain. With Ben blocking any attempt I made to try and relay the truth to you, I tried ever so subtly to warn you guys in various ways. Amidst the chaos and my delirium, I devised to make a barely noticeable pattern in my videos. All 5 videos I recorded over the 4 days, I have either had the Mask of Truth, interacted with the Gossip Stone, or the Lens of Truth equipped at some point. For you Zelda enthusiasts, these are the symbols of honesty and trustworthiness. I would hope that one of you had picked up on this reference. As I have played the file, which I have named Ben, being mindful of how Ben was watching over me in every move, I made a point to avoid doing anything too obvious. But I send out hidden messages to you guys. I never equipped the lens, nor the mask, nor visited a stone. It worked. And the video was uploaded. I prayed that someone would notice the pattern didn't apply to Ben. The tags followed suit too. I hope you guys paid attention to those well. They were my little messages to you. Nothing big enough that they would catch Ben's attention or make him suspect anything. With Ben manipulating and changing my files, I honestly hope that you guys saw what was close to actually happening, but there's no way for me to know. This may be a long read, but I don't have time to proofread or do all of my research pretty, but here it is. September 6, 2010. 11 p.m. I can't believe what happened. I'm not sure if this is some kind of elaborate hoax. Despite the fear, I can't help but feel exceptionally curious about this. Who or what is that statue? A lot of questions here. I'm starting this document as a diary so I can keep track of everything. I'm typing up a summary of what happened so I can come back to it later. September 7th, 2010. 2:10 a.m. Summary was posted here, but you can go back and look at my first post for day 4.wmv for that. 4:23 a.m. I can't sleep. I've been trying so hard, but the harder I try, I just get more restless. I feel like that statue is appearing whenever I close my eyes. 8:20 a.m. I didn't sleep at all. I'm just going to start my day. I don't think I have the energy to go to class today. I'm going to drive back down to that old man, taking my buddy Tyler with me just in case. 1:18 p.m. I'm back home. No sign of the old man. He appears to be moving the next day, but maybe that for sale sign was up there yesterday, and I just didn't notice it. Tyler wants to know what's been gotten me all worked up, but I didn't tell him. I'm going to eat. I feel like death. 3:46 p.m. I could have sworn driving back from the subway that I saw the elegy statue buried in some shrubbery staring at me as I go by. Now I definitely need sleep. 5 p.m. I don't think a lot of people would believe me if I told them what's happening. I think I'm going to try posting this on the internet. I think I'll just use the summary. These notes are pretty sporadic. 6 p.m. Connected my capture card to my computer to upload the footage. I thought my computer froze for a second, made this strange popping noise when I hooked up everything, but now it seems to be working fine again. My computer can't die on me now. 7 p.m. Footage is finished uploading. The quality's a lot better than I thought it would be. Gee, I guess this really is a special cartridge. I never had it come through this clear before. 8:45. I thought I saw an icon pop up on my desk that looked like the statue's face for a split second. Gave me quite a scare. Getting really unnerved and delirious. I'm gonna crash after this. 9 p.m. Begin uploading my YouTube video on an alternate account. 9:03. I don't remember having uploaded a Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines video last year. This was probably just the account I shared with a friend of mine last summer. I hope he doesn't mind me using it to upload this. 9:55 p.m. Posting my summary of day 4 with a link to the YouTube videos. I'm going to try and stay awake, but I'm so tired right now. September 8th, 2010. 10:48 a.m. I had a dream about the statue. I dreamed that it was following me in my dream, that I would be minding my own business when I would feel my neck hair standing up on end. I would turn around to that thing, that horrible, lifeless statue would be staring at me with those empty eyes, right at me, merely inches away. And in my dream, I remember calling it Ben, the power of suggestion, most likely. I never before had a dream that I could remember so vividly. 11:12 a.m. I really don't want to play this game. I think I'm going to go back to see if that old man's there instead. 1:35 p.m. No old man. I had a really interesting conversation with his neighbor. I'll post the full thing with the summary of tonight's attempt at playing the game. I'm going to wait for a bit, though, to see if I can't dig up any more information on this Ben guy. 2:45 p.m. I've been getting random, inexplicable headaches due to the lack of sleep and keep hearing that song in my head. It's also flu season, so I need to be careful not to get sick. My immune system is going to be shit right now because of that all-nighter. 3:02 p.m. My computer just, on its own, opened up a text document and wrote the words, "Hi, www.cleverbot.com," by itself. What the fuck? 3:46 p.m. I went to the website. It's one of those bot chatting programs. Best if I just let the conversation speak for itself. 9, 8, 10 conversations. Hello? Hello. Who is this and how are you able to control my computer? Who am I? Right. Forgot. You're a bot. Do you really think that? Listen, I know whoever's fucking with my computer can see my screen right now. Yes. Yeah, and I'll wager that you're one of those IT kids who think he's tough shit. You know what you're doing is illegal right now. Is it? No shit. You're familiar with HTA terms, invasion of privacy? Get the fuck off my computer, kid. I am your computer. Cool story. Anyway, I'm calling DPS. You picked a bad time to fuck with me, kid. Should I wait until you play the game, then? What? That game? Majora's Mask? Yes. How did you know about that? Because. Because what? I did it. You did what? I played with you. What the fuck? Were you scared? Who the fuck is this? Ben, the statue? You're inside of my computer now? Yes. How? You connected me. How the hell did I connect you? Cables and cords. How? Tell me about yourself. What? Yeah, tell me about yourself. What do you mean? What is it that really scares you? What the fuck? Answer. No. Answer. What the fuck? How the fuck did you just open that by yourself? I am your computer now. How much can you control? All. What do you want from me? To entertain. You're stuck inside there. You can't hurt me? Ha? Question mark. Go play. No, you can't hurt me. Took you longer to type that. So, you're not sure. If you're so powerful, then why use ridiculous websites like this to chat with me? Less messy, more structured. Fun. Fun? Fun? Yes, tradition, I like it. You think this is funny? Amusing. And my notes? You may write them down. Why are you telling me that? Why are you letting me? It is amusing to see what you think of me. Window closes. 3:50 p.m. What have I done? I've invited into my computer. I continue to write these notes, write my summaries. I feel like I'm a prisoner in my one place of security. I don't know if I'm hallucinating or not. I feel like I'm fucking insane right now. I can feel it watching over me, even as I type this. Ben is controlling everything in the game, toying with me, leading me like a sheep. But for what? For what purpose? I know Bren drowned, but why these hauntings? What the fuck am I even doing? It probably can see this right now. 4:35 p.m. Summary of Ben.wmv playthrough. 7:18 p.m. Ben called me to Cleverbot again. He tells me that he's sorry and wants to be freed, and that I can free him. That just like how he got onto my computer from the capture card, he can spread, but he needs my help, and he says that I'm special because I can help him. That is the first nice thing he has said. He promises to leave me alone if I do it. He swears he will. I don't know what to think right now. Can I even trust this thing? 7:20 p.m. I'm terrified of it, but it's twisted and fucked up version of fun. He's saying that the game is over. I do want it to be over. He says that he just wants to be free, that he's trapped in a cartridge on my computer, and he just wants to be freed. I don't want to have to deal with this shit. I don't know how long I can deal with the watching. It's watching in my every move, every keystroke. I have nothing private anymore. It knows everything that's been on my computer. It tells that if it wanted to, it could do horrible things to me, but it hasn't done anything, so I don't know if I should trust it. 8:01 p.m. Something tells me that I'm being played again, just like in the game. 9:29 p.m. Ben called me to Cleverbot again. I ignored it and I went to go take a shower. When I came to the laptop, I was welcomed with an image of the elegy statue staring at me with those dead eyes. I don't want to talk to him. 9:44 p.m. Fuck you, Ben, I'm not talking to you. 9:56 p.m. Fuck you, Ben, I'm not talking to you. 10:06 p.m. Fuck you, Ben, I'm not talking to you. 10:12 p.m. Fuck you, Ben, I am not talking to you. 10:45 p.m. It's been more than half an hour and the messages have stopped. Ben has stopped. I'm beginning to think that Ben isn't confined just to my computer cartridge. I'm beginning to feel something it's hard to explain. I've never been spiritual, but there's something different about the air in my dorm room now. 11:42 p.m. I'm beginning to see the elegy statue randomly as I search the internet, places where it shouldn't be. I'll be scrolling down and suddenly I'm staring at a picture of the elegy statue. Always the elegy statue. I don't know how much more of this I can take. September 9th, 12:35 a.m. My worst fears confirmed. Ben has tampered with my summary of ben.wmv. I looked at my summary that I had posted on various forums for the ben.wmv file, and parts of it have been omitted. There's no mention of Ben existing outside the game. There's no mention of the Moon Children. How could he have been quick to delete the post without me noticing? I'm wondering if maybe it appeared to me that I was posting everything, but in reality, did Ben post his own censored version? I'm going to ask Ben why he did it. 12:50 a.m. He isn't responding to me on Cleverbot. It's just giving the generic responses as it usually does. I'm just talking to a bot this time. 1:24 a.m. I think Ben is mad at him. 10:43 a.m. Moon Children appeared in my dreams last night. They lifted up their masks to reveal their hideously disfigured faces, maggots crawling out of their orifices, sunken black holes where their eyes should be, and a yellow smile that slowly grew bigger and bigger as they came closer to me. They told me they wanted to play. I tried to run from them, but 4 children pinned me down to the ground with surprising strength. Over them stood the happy masked salesman, announcing that he had a new mask that he wanted me to try. In his spastic, sudden movements matching the in-game appearance, he took out a mask modeled off of someone else's face that I couldn't recognize. a younger-looking face. He handed it to the Moon Children. Giggling, they latched it to my face, their horrible, broken bodies bouncing up and down. 2 of them held me, while the other 2 began to sew the mask onto my face. My shrieks and screams caused Happy Mask Salesman's face to turn to the most horrific smile I'd ever seen. He sporadically moved around examining the procedure like a curious doctor, and in that impossible moment I flailed around, but it was no use. My eyes rolled into the back of my head because of the pain. It felt so real, but I couldn't wake up. I couldn't wake up no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't wake up. After the mask was melded into my flesh, they began sewing my legs together, then my arms. The horrific feeling of a needle puncturing your legs and pulling them in, rupturing your Achilles tendons and tying them together, resonated throughout my entire body. I tried to scream, but the mask was pressed so tightly against my face that it was my new face. And my new face had no mouth. I didn't make a sound. I tried telling myself that it was in my head and I was dreaming. I tried telling myself again and again. Suddenly, the Moon Children stopped and looked at me. They just stared at me. And the Happy Mask Salesman slowly bent down and stared at me, inches away from my face, grinning, and then he simply said, "You've met a terrible fate, haven't you?" Before the Moon Children resumed with increased vigor, I couldn't wake up. It wouldn't let me wake up until they had crafted me into another elegy statue. I woke up sweating, crying, and shaking uncontrollably. I immediately ran to my computer and went for Ben. 9-9-10 conversation. Answer me, Ben. Welcome back. What is the point of doing this? Why? Amusing to see. How? Fun to play, fun to toy with you, make you feel safe. I wonder how you would have reacted. To what? If I hadn't revealed myself, to stay hidden, only doing little things to play with you. Close out your windows, turn off your computer, move your mouse by itself. Little things to make you wonder if I'm there, but never know. Give you little hints that I am. I wanted to do something different with you. You did this before? Yes, and I will do it again. To who, Ben? To who, Ben? Do you know, Ben? Won't tell you that information to you. How did Ben die? You know. No, but how did he drown? Won't tell that to you. Why? It is reserved for another. Who? Another who asks. When? Later. Window is closed. I'm beginning to think that this thing maybe isn't Ben at all. In its sadistic nature, I wouldn't be surprised if it took the boy's name after killing him. 12:04 p.m. My room is beginning to feel different again. There's something out there. I feel really threatened. Like there's something trying to reach out to me and strangle me, but I can't quite get there. 12:46 p.m. I think Ben doesn't want to play with me anymore. I'll play again. I'll play the game again, Ben. Can you see this? I'll play the game again. Please, just stop this, please. 1:41 p.m. I'm going insane trying to decide what is real and what isn't. Ben is just playing a trick on me. For what? Or is this real? Ben is generating these replies, or are actual people posting them? Did I just see the screen flicker, or was that my imagination? Imagine depending on the internet, trusting your eyes for your entire life, and then being blinded. You can't rely on it anymore. You second guess everything for brief moments. I am looking at responses to my videos, but people are pointing out things that look fake or photoshopped or whatever, and there's literally no way for me to know if Ben changed something on purpose to try and shut me out. Or maybe those replies were just constructed by Ben to try and discourage me from ever reaching out. See, if I get fucking caught in an infinite mindfuck loop like this, I'll be wearing on my sanity and pushing me to the edge. As I'm writing this, there's no way even telling if anyone cares as much as I think they do. Is this just another fucking trick? Or does this whole document even exist? Am I writing nothing? 9-9-10 Conversation 2. What is it? What's the point of the playing? I die whenever I do anything. You die because you can't figure out the secret. What? Thematic. What the fuck are you talking about? There's beauty in your suffering. Window is closed. 4:09 p.m. Ben is making me play the game again. It tells me that it has something very important to show. 6:23 p.m. Summary of drowned.wmv playthrough. 9:09 p.m. Summary of children.wmv playthrough. September 10th, 2010. 11:52 a.m. The drowned.wmv playthrough was up when I woke up today. I remember typing it up, but I don't ever remember posting it. He censored again. There was no mentioning of the old man. I have no voice anymore. I'm only posting what he wants me to post. And I am the mask he uses to disguise himself as he lies. 11:55 a.m. There's an entire video summary of a video that I don't remember doing. Reading through the summary, it sounds morbid, resembling my dream from 2 nights ago, except for on a far more sadistic scale. These moon children, there's something more to them, almost as if they're another entity from Ben. Something happened last night that I can't remember. I'm posting the 4th summary to the forums now. Shadow of my chair moved. 12 p.m. Ben won't let me visit YouTube. I can browse the rest of the sites, but he keeps exiting the window when I go to YouTube. Why? 2:02 p.m. I'm feeling the air start to constrict. I don't know. I don't think I'm alone here. Whatever aura has been here is getting more violent. 2:44 p.m. I'm trying to contact Ben on Cleverbot. He's not responding. I just get the AI. 3:51 p.m. My ears aren't fooling me. I'm hearing the reverse song of healing. I keep hearing it. 4:23 p.m. I'm now positive of it. Earlier I thought it had just been a weird coincidence. But now I know. I just went to open my window, and 3 floors down on ground level I saw an old man. I'm completely positive I did. The same guy, just staring up at my window, standing in the middle of the campus. If any students took notice of him, they didn't seem to acknowledge it. That's where my notes end. I fled in my room, taking the cartridge with me. I don't want to get into the details of what happened. I'll lose my train of thought as I hammer out these last details. It's been roughly 2 days since then. This is my last summary and service to you, and the final video you guys saw. Matt.wmv. The last video entry I made. Matt.wmv began as normal. I spawned in the clock town, as usual, and nothing seemed to be out of place. I determined to set up things right. I played the Oath of Order on top of the clock tower on the 4th day, prepared myself, sped up time, I got to the final day. Making my way to the observatory, as I got to the telescope room and approached the astronomer, he would not let me look into his telescope. He only told me that it would be cheating, and I had to follow the rules. Despite my repeated efforts, the game would not let me do the 4th day glitch, no matter how hard I tried. I tried working around the game and doing the glitch, but it was adamant this time. Regardless of if I simply had the illusion of free will in prior games, this time the game was becoming more aggressive than anything I'd ever seen. It eventually told me to go to the Icana Canyon, where the game would end and it would stop haunting me. Anxious and desperate to end this nightmare, I played the Song of Soaring and ended up there. I was told to check my inventory and that I would find the answers there to end the game. I arrived at Icana Canyon. I saved my progress at the owl statue. I searched through my inventory and finally noticed that I was missing a reoccurring song, the Elegy of Emptiness. Obviously, once I traveled there and learned a new song, I suppose it was the last thing I needed before Ben decided it had enough fun playing with me. Ben is a manipulator. He tries to fool his victims into security and makes you drop your guard like a Venus flytrap. He ensnares them. I am nothing but a puppet to him. He enjoys seeing what kind of human emotions he can tap into by doing different things. There are still some things about this whole experience that still don't make sense. But then again, I was never good at figuring these things out. I'm not exactly in the right state of mind. I'm giving you all the pieces of the puzzle for you to analyze and piece together the missing links. I am typing these closing thoughts on a library computer on campus. I've emailed myself the notes and have them stored on my infected computer from the last 4 days. I'm going to combine those copy-paste those notes with the closing/openings that I've been typing here on a safe and public computer into one text document. I'm not taking any chances of spreading Ben. I would not wish this horrible torment on anyone, and I've made sure to have all my bases covered. I didn't run into any problems with Ben when I was back on my computer trying to email myself the notes. It went right under his fucking nose. He has no idea what he just let me do. He had no problems opening the TXT document from my infected computer in my email. Either I can't describe how it feels to finally be able to get this word out in post. This nightmare ends here. That said, do not download any of my videos or anything about my videos through YouTube, video, audio ripper, a screen grab, whatever. I don't know how we can spread, but I know that just watching him on YouTube reading my text won't be able to allow him to spread. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed my help in the first place. But I strongly recommend that you do not take anything you streaming online onto your personal computer. This will be my last posting, putting this up on this forum for the world. If you see any further posts from me after today's current date, September 12th, after the current time, 12:08 a.m., discredit them. It has already been proven that Ben can access my account and password and manipulate my computer. And like I said, I have no idea what extent he can do this, but I know that it will do anything to break free. He is desperate. To ensure your safety, just forget about me, please. It is obvious that this goes without saying, but from here on, do not download any images I may have put up, any files, anything. This 5th day will be my last day. I'm going to burn the cartridge, and when I come back, I'm going to destroy my laptop. Again, even though I don't know, this is sort of bittersweet for me. This semester, I really didn't have any friends, or rather, I stopped paying attention to them. Free.wmv. But I suppose that's partially to blame, because I'm the genius who picked to live in a single. Suppose someone get a hold of me and save me before I get too immersed in this game would have literally saved my life. However, it proved too much for me. I'm just glad that it happened and I could get the warning out so Ben dies here. Lastly, thank you for taking the time to open this and open yourselves up to hearing my story. Despite you may not believing me, you didn't have to do that. Really, you shouldn't have. Your support this entire time has kept me going. Now I'm finally free of this. Thanks again. Okay, so that was the Ben Drowned creepypasta. Personally, in my opinion, I've got not too much opinion on it. It's a good creepypasta. I personally feel like it's better than other creepypastas. Like, out of really old creepypastas, I find it's better than a lot of other really popular ones like Squidward Suicide that we're about to talk about next, or things like Jeff the Killer. But it's not perfect, of course. There's always going to be creepypastas that fall in... All old creepypastas fall into the bad old creepypasta tropes. But it's also, I kind of had a bit of, hate about this one, just in my mind, because, like, you can probably tell my voice doesn't sound good. I've been recording for a long time, and it's, like, 1 in the morning, because I have to get this done, and I don't have much time left to get it done. But yeah, I would rate this creepypasta. Also, one thing about the ratings, I'm rating them on a scale of old creepypastas, so when I say like an 8 out of like 5, that doesn't mean it's like a super good creepypasta, it's a super good old creepypasta. But with that said, this one's basically pretty close to that. I would say it's probably an 8.3. But yeah, that's my opinions on Ben Drowned. Now we're going to move on to Squidward Suicide. Squidward Suicide. I just want to start off by saying that if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed. There isn't one. I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for my degree in animation. It wasn't paid, of course, most internships aren't, but I did have the perk of beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time would go crazy over it. Since I worked directly with the editors and animators, I got to view new episodes before they were aired. I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. They had recently made the SpongeBob movie. The entire staff was somewhat sapped of creativity, so it took them longer to start up this season. But the delay lasted longer for more upsetting reasons. There was a problem with the Series 4 premiere that set everyone and everything back several months. Me and 2 other interns were in the editing room, along with the lead animators and sound editors. For the final cut of an episode, we received a copy that was supposed to be Fear of a Krabby Patty, and gathered around the screen to watch. Now, given that the final cut isn't final, animators often put up a mock title card at the beginning. It's a sort of inside joke for us, with phony, oftentimes lewd titles being such as How Sex Doesn't Work instead of Rockabye Bivalve, in which SpongeBob and Patrick adopt a sea scallop. Nothing particularly funny, just work-related chuckles. So, when we saw a title card, Squidward Suicide, we didn't think it was more than a morbid joke. One of the other interns did a small throat laugh at it. The episode started with a happy-go-lucky music playing as normal. The story began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside. Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down, as he has a concert that night and needs to practice. SpongeBob says it's okay, and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bubble splash screen comes up, and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is when things begin to seem off. While playing, a few frames repeat themselves. The sound doesn't. It's supposed to be synced with the animation. So yes, that's not common, but when Squidward stops playing, the sound finishes as if the skip never happened. There is a slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing, that's common in the show, mind you. You can very clearly hear malice in it. Squidward's in full frame and looks visibly afraid. The shock goes to the crowd with SpongeBob in center frame. He too is booing, which is very much unlike him. This isn't the oddest thing, though. What's odd is that everyone has hyper-realistic eyes, all very detailed. Clearly not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. The pupils were red, and some of us looked at each other, obviously confused, but since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view of his porthole window in the night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part is at this point, there's no sound. Literally none. Not even the feedback from the speakers in the room, as if the speakers were turned off, though their statuses showed that they were working perfectly. Squidward just sits there in silence, blinking for about 30 seconds. Then he starts to sob softly. He puts his hands, tentacles, over his eyes and cries quietly for a full minute more. All the while, a sound in the background is very gradually growing. From nothing to barely audible, it sounds like a slight breeze through a forest. The screen slowly begins to zoom in on his face. By slowly, I mean that it's only noticeable if you look at shots 10 seconds apart by side. His sobbing gets louder, more full of hurt and anger. The screen then twitches a bit, as if it twists in on itself for a second, before going back to normal. The wind through the trees sound gets louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere. The eerie part is that the sound, and Squidward's sobbing, sounded real. It was like it wasn't coming from the speakers, but the speakers themselves were holes that the sound was traveling through from the other side. As good a sound as the studio likes to have, they don't have the equipment to be able to produce audio of that quality. Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, a very faintly audible something that sounded like laughing. It came at odd intervals and never lasted more than a second. You had a very hard time pinning it. We watched this episode twice, so pardon me if things sound too specific, but I had time to think about them. After about 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and then twitched violently. Something flashed over it, as if a single frame was replaced. The lead animation editor paused and rewound the frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a still photo of a dead child. He couldn't have been more than 6. His face was mangled and bloody. One eye dangling over it popped. He was naked down to his underwear, his stomach crudely cut open and his entrails splayed out behind him. He was lying down on some pavement that was probably a road. The most upsetting part that there was a shadow of a photographer, but no crime tape, no evidence tags or markers. The angle was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would have seemed like they were the person responsible for the child's death. We were, of course, mortified, but pressed on, hoping this was just a sick joke. The screen flipped back to Squidward, still sobbing, louder than before, half of his body in frame. Now there was what appeared to be blood running down his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in the same hyper-realistic style, looking as if you get it on your fingers if you touch the screen. The wind sounded now almost as if it was a gale blowing through a forest, and there were even snapping sounds like of branches. The laughing, a deep baritone, lasted for longer intervals and came more frequently. After about 20 seconds, the screen twisted and showed a single-frame photo. The editor was reluctant to go back. We all were, but he knew he had to. This time the photo appeared of a little girl, no older than the first child. She was laying on her stomach, her barrettes in a pool of blood next to her. Her left eye was damaged in the same way as the boy, and she was naked except for underpants. Her entrails were piled on top of her, and another crude cut along her back. Again, the body was on the screen, and the photographer's shadow was visible, in very similar size and shape to the first. I had to choke back vomit. One intern, the only female in the room, ran out. The show resumed. About 5 seconds after this photo played, Squidward went silent. All the sound cut out. like it did when the scene started. He put his tentacles down. His eyes were now done in hyper-realism, like all the others were at the beginning of the episode. They were bleeding, bloodshot, and pulsating. He just stared at the screen, as if watching the viewer, and after about 10 seconds he started sobbing, this time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud. The most fear-inducing thing of all was what was mixed with the screams. Tears and blood were dripping down his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, and so did the deep-voiced laugh. This time the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames. The animator was able to stop it on the 4th and back it up. This time it was a photo of a boy about the same age, but the scene was different. His entrails were being pulled out of his stomach from a wound by a large hand. The right eye popped and dangling, blood trickling down it. The animator proceeded. The next frame was different, but we couldn't tell how. He continued the next image. It was the same thing. Then we went back and played the first few quicker. I lost it. I vomited on the floor. The animation and sound editors were gasping at the screen. The 5 frames were not 5 different photos. They were frames from a video. We saw the hand slowly lift out the guts. We saw the kid's eyes focus on it. We even saw 2 frames of the kid beginning to blink. The lead sound editor told us to stop. He had to call in the creator to see this. Mr. Hillenberg arrived within about 15 minutes. He was confused about why he had been called, so the editor just continued the episode. Once the next frames were shown, all screaming and the sound stopped. Squidward was just staring at the viewer, his face shaking up the full frame for about 10 seconds. The shot quickly panned out, and that deep voice said, "Do it." And we saw a shotgun in Squidward's hands. He immediately put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him in his bed. He flies back with force. The last 5 seconds of the episode show his body on the bed, on its side, one eye dangling from what's left of his head on the floor, staring blankly at it. The episode ends. Mr. Hillenberg was obviously angry at this. He demanded to know what the hell was going on. Most of the people left the room at this point, so there was only a handful of us left to watch it again. Viewing the episode twice only served to imprint the entirety of it into my mind and cause horrible nightmares. I'm sorry I stayed. The only theory we could think of that was the file had been edited by someone in the chain from the drawing studio to here. The CTO was called to find out when it had happened. An analysis of the file showed it mixed with new material. However, the timestamp of the change was a mere 24 seconds before we began viewing it. All equipment involved was examined for foreign software and hardware, as well as glitches, such as if the timestamp was showing us the wrong time, but everything checked out fine. We didn't know what happened. To this day, nobody does. There was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. No child seen was identified, and no clues were gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues from the photos. I never believed in an unexplainable phenomenon before, but now that I've had something happen to me, and I can't prove anything beyond anecdotal evidence, I think twice about things. My opinions on Squidward's suicide. So I feel like it's not even one of the creepypastas where it had a good concept that was kind of ruined by the old tropes. I never actually felt like the concept was that good. It just kind of was a bit bad and just got worse. Like, it falls into the usual trap of having unnecessary death and gore. Like, at the most, it only needed one of the photos. But it had everything, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I don't have much to say about this one. I would rate it about 3.7. Smile Dog. I first met in person with Mary E. in the summer of 2007. I had arranged with her husband of 15 years, Terrence, to see her for an interview. Mary had initially agreed, since I was not a newsman, but rather an amateur writer gathering information for a few early college assignments, and if all went according to plan, some pieces of fiction. We scheduled the interview for a particular weekend, and when I was in Chicago on unrelated business. But at the last moment, Mary changed her mind and locked herself in the couple's bedroom, refusing to meet with me. For half an hour I sat with Terrence as we camped outside the bedroom door. I listened and took notes while attempting fruitlessly to calm his wife. The things Mary said made little sense, but could fit with the pattern I was expecting. Though I could not see her, I could tell from her voice that she was crying, and more often than not, her objections to speaking with me centered around incoherent diatribe on her dreams, her nightmares. Terrence apologized profusely, then we ceased the exercise. I did my best to take it in my stride. Recall that I wasn't a reporter in a search of a story, but merely a curious young man in search of information. Besides, I thought at the time I could perhaps find another similar case if I put my mind and resources into it. Mary E. was the psyop for a small Chicago-based bulletin board system in 1992. When she first encountered Smile.jpg and her life changed forever. She and Terrence had been married for only 5 months. Mary was one of estimated 400 people who saw the images when it was posted as a hyperlink on the BBS, though she was the only one who has spoken openly about the experience. The rest have remained anonymous, or perhaps dead. In 2005, when I was only in 10th grade, Smile.jpg was first brought to my attention by my burgeoning interest in web-based phenomenon. Mary was the most often cited victim of what is referred to as Smile Dog, being the Smile.jpg is reputed to display. What caught my interest, other than the obvious macabre elements of the cyber legend and my proclivity towards such things, was the sheer lack of information, usually to the point people didn't even believe it exists other than a rumor or a hoax. It is unique because the entire phenomenon centers on a picture file, the file that is nowhere to be found on the internet. Certainly many photo-manipulated simulacra litter the web, showing up with most frequency on such as image boards like 4chan, particularly the Xfos paranormal subboard. It is suspected that these are fakes because they do not have the same effect as the true Smile.jpg. It is believed to have, namely, sudden onset temporal lobe epilepsy and acute anxiety. This purported reaction in the viewer is one of the reasons why the phantom-like Smile.jpg is regarded with such disdain. It is patently absurd, though depending on whom you ask, the reluctance to acknowledge Smile.jpg's existence might be just much out of fear as it is out of disbelief. Neither Smile.jpg nor SmileDog is mentioned anywhere on Wikipedia, although websites feature articles on such other perhaps more scandalous shock sites as Hello.jpg or Two Girls One Cup. Any attempt to create a page pertaining to Smile.jpg is summarily deleted by any of Encyclopedia's many admins. Encounters with Smile.jpg are the stuff of internet legend. Mary E.'s story is not unique. There are unverified rumors of Smile.jpg showing up in the early days of the Usenet, and even one persisted tale that a 2002 hacker flooded the forums of a humor and satire website with something awful, with a deluge of smile dog pictures, rendering almost half the forum's users at the time epileptic. It is also said that in the mid to late 90s, the Smile.jpg circulated on the Usenet as an attachment of a chain email with the subject line, "Smile, God loves you." Yet despite the huge exposure these stunts would generate, there are very few people who admit to having experienced any of them, and no trace of the file or any link has ever been discovered. Those who claim to have seen Smile.jpg often weakly joke that they were far too busy to save a copy of the picture to their hard drive. However, all alleged victims offer the same description of the photo: a dog-like creature, usually described as appearing similar to a Siberian husky, illuminated by the flash of a camera, sits in a dim room. The only background detail that is visible is a human hand extending from the darkness near the left side of the frame. The hand is empty, but usually described as beckoning, of course. Most attention is given to the dog or the dog creature. Some victims are more certain than others about what they claim to have seen. The muzzle of the beast is reputedly split in a wide grin, revealing 2 rows of very white, very straight, very sharp, and very human-looking teeth. This is, of course, not a description given immediately after viewing the picture, but rather a recollection of the victims claim to have seen the picture endlessly repeat in their mind's eye during the time they are, in reality, having epileptic fits. These fits are reported to continue indeterminately, often while the victims sleep, resulting in very vivid and disturbing nightmares. These may be treated with medication, though it is sometimes more effective than others. Mary E., I assumed, was not on effective medication. That's why after my visit to her apartment in 2007, I sent out feelers to several folklore and urban legend-orientated news groups, websites, and mailing lists, hoping to find the name of a supposed victim of Smile.jpg, who felt more interested in talking about his experiences. For a time, nothing happened. At length, I forgot completely about my pursuits, since I had begun my freshman year of college and was quite busy. Mary contacted me via email, however, near the beginning of March 2008, added by Moose Juice to jml at blankedout.com from Mary at blankedout.net. Subject: last summer's interview. Dear Mr. L, I am incredibly sorry about my behavior last summer when you came to interview me. I hope you understand that it was to no fault of yours, but rather my own problems that led me to act out as I did. I realize that I could have handled the situation more decorously. However, I hope you will forgive me. At the time, I was afraid. You see, for 15 years, I've been haunted by smile.jpg, smile dog. It comes to me in my sleep every night. I know that sounds silly, but it is true. There is an ineffable quality about my dreams, my nightmares, that makes them completely unlike any real dreams I've ever had. I do not move and I do not speak. I simply look ahead, and the only thing ahead of me is the scene from that horrible picture. I see the beckoning hand, and I see Smile Dog. It talks to me. It is not a dog, of course, though I'm not quite sure what it really is. It tells me that it will leave me alone only if I do as it asks. All I must do, it says, is spread the word. This is how it phrases all its demands, and I know exactly what it means. It wants me to show it to someone else. And I could. The week after my incident, I received in the mail a manila envelope with no return address. Inside was only a 3.5-inch floppy diskette. Without having to check, I knew precisely what was on it. I thought for a long time about my options. I could show it to a stranger, a coworker, could even show it to Terrence. As much as the idea disgusted me, what would happen then? Well, if Smile Dog kept its word, I could sleep. Yet if it lied, what would I do? Who is to say something worse would not come for me if I did as the creature asked? So I did nothing for 15 years, though I kept the diskette hidden amongst my many things. Every night for 15 years, Smile Dog has come to me in my sleep and demanded that I spread the word. For 15 years I've stood strong, though there have been hard times. Many of my fellow victims on the BBS board, when I first encountered smile.jpg, stopped posting. I heard some of them committed suicide, others remained completely silent, simply disappearing off the face of the web. They are the ones I worry about the most. I sincerely hope you will forgive me, Mr. L. The last summer, when you contacted me and my husband about an interview, I was near the breaking point. I decided I was going to give you the floppy diskette. I didn't care if Smile Dog was lying or not. I wanted it to end. You were a stranger, someone I had no connection with, and I thought I would not feel sorrow when you took the diskette as part of your research and sealed your fate. Before you arrived, I realized what I was doing. I was plotting to ruin your life. I could not stand the thought, and in fact, I still cannot. I am ashamed, Mr. L., and I hope that this warning will dissuade you from a further investigation of smile.jpg. You may, in time, encounter someone who is, if not weaker than I, then wholly more depraved, someone who will not hesitate to follow Smile Dog's orders. Stop while you're still whole. Sincerely, Mary E. Terrence contacted me later that month with the news that his wife had killed herself. While cleaning up the various things she'd left behind, closing email accounts, and the like, he happened upon the above message. He was a man in shambles, and wept as he told me to listen to his wife's advice. He had found the diskette, and he revealed he had burnt it until nothing was left but a stinking pile of blackened plastic. The part that most disturbed him, however, was that the diskette had hissed as it melted, like some sort of animal, he said. I will admit that I was a little uncertain about how to respond to this. First I thought perhaps it was a joke, with the couple's belated playing with the situation in order to get a rise out of me. A quick check of several Chicago newspapers online obituaries, however, proved that Mary E. was indeed dead. There was, of course, no mention of suicide in the article. I decided that, for the time at least, I would not further pursue the subject of smile.jpg, especially since I had finals coming up at the end of May. But the world has an odd way of testing us. Almost a full year later, after I'd returned from my disastrous interview with Mary E., I received another email to jml at blank.com from elizaher82 at blank.com. Subject: smile. Hello, I found your email address through a mailing list on your profile and said you are interested in Smile Dog. I I have seen it, and it is not as bad as everyone says. I sent it to you here, just spreading the word. The final line chilled me to my bones. According to my email client, there was one file attached. Naturally, smile.jpg. I considered downloading it for some time. It was most likely fake, I imagined. Even if it weren't, I was never wholly convinced of smile.jpg's peculiar powers. Mary E's account had shaken me, yes, but she was probably just mentally unbalanced anyway. After all, how could a simple image do what smile.jpg was said to accomplish? What sort of creature was it that could break someone's mind with only the power of the eye? If such things were patently absurd, then why did the legend exist at all? If I downloaded the image, if I looked at it, and if Mary turned out to be correct, if Smile.dog came to me in my dreams demanding I spread the word, what would I do? Would I live my life as Mary had, fighting against the urge to give in until I died? Or would I simply spread the word, eager to be put to rest? And if I chose the latter route, how could I do it? Whom could I burden in turn? If I went through with my earlier intention to write a short article about smile.jpg, I decided I could attach it as evidence, and anyone who reads the article, anyone who took interest, would be affected. And even assuming the smile.jpg attached to the email was genuine, would it be capricious enough to save myself in that manner? Could I spread the word? Yes. Yes, I could. Okay, my opinions on Smile Dog. So, it's pretty good in my opinion. It's a nice creepypasta. I think technically, I feel like I actually like the idea more than the creepypasta. But, it is a good one. The whole idea of having a creepypasta that basically forces you to spread itself is a really interesting idea, and also kind of plays off of what creepypastas even are. But yeah, I think it's pretty good. I'd give it a 9.2. It's definitely a good one. Russian sleep experiment. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept sealed in an environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books and cots to sleep on, but no bedding, as well as running water, a toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for a month. Test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored. It was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past. The general tone of their conversations took a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and the events that led them to where they were, and they started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering into the microphones and the one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win over the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades. The other subjects in captivity with them, at first, was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran to the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight, at which point he continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior was how the other captives reacted to it, or rather, didn't react. They continued whispering into the microphones until a second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes, and the screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering into the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it was impossible that no sound could be occurring with the 5 people inside. Oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. The morning of the 14th day, researchers did something that they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used an intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any responses from the people that they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a calm voice respond in a single phrase, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more responses using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of a stimulant gas and filled with fresh air. Immediately, voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of a loved one, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and the soldiers were sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so they did. The soldiers saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could call them rightly in the state of anything alive. The food rations over the past 5 days had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chest stuffed into the drain at the center of the chamber, blocking it and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh was exposed, and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounded, most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the rib cage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs to the rib cage. All blood vessels and organs remained intact, but had been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still, many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. The subjects themselves continued to scream to be left in the chamber and begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. Everyone's surprised the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another one was gravely injured by having the testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you count the ones that had committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured and bled out almost immediately. Medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. His heart was seen to beat for full 2 minutes after it had bled out, to the point where there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail around for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack everyone in reach, just repeating the word "more" over and over and over, weaker and weaker until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 taken only to a surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, he found that he was effectively immune to the sedative that they had given him to prepare him for the surgery. He fought furiously against the restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier was holding that wrist. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered closed, his heart stopped. The autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled in the normal level of oxygen. The muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle not to be subdued. Most of them were from the force that his own muscles had exerted. The second survivor had been the first of the group of the 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords were destroyed. He was unable to beg or object to surgery. He only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval of the anesthetic gas when it was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested reluctantly that they should try surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for an entire 6-hour procedure of replacing the abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be not medically possible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse, insisting that the surgery, stated that she had seen from the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, a surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple: keep cutting. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform on the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time. They were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they had wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back in the chamber, awaiting determination as what should be done with them. The researchers facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project. Considering euthanizing the surviving subjects, the commander officer and ex-KGB instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going to be back on the gas. All 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again, for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly, having been the first to be wired to an EEG machine. Most of the researchers were monitoring their brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if they were repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw the man's eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flatlines as the one who had died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew a gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed the gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, with the remaining members of the medical research team, and fled the room. I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you, he screamed at the man strapped to the table. What are you? He demanded. I must know. The subject smiled. Have you forgotten so easily? The subject asked. We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be set free every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go into the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread. The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject wheezily choked out, so nearly free. The Russian sleep experiment. I personally really like this, even though I've heard the main complaint that like, oh, it's one of those creepypastas that falls into the trap of having unnecessary gore. I feel like the gore in this one actually really adds to it. Like, this sounds like something a government would do during a war. Like, if you do go and do research on like stuff like the states or like the United States or like Japan or Russia have actually done in the past, they've done some crazy stuff. And I actually feel like this is kind of I feel like the gore is one of the main points of it, which is why, in my opinion, it's more excusable. It's still not the best creepypasta, but it's good. I would give it about 7.6. Laughing Jack. It was a nice summer day. My 5-year-old James was playing outside in the backyard of our suburban home. James always had been a quiet boy. He plays with himself mostly. He had never had many friends, but always had a wild imagination. I was in the kitchen feeding our dog Fido when I heard what sounded like James talking to someone in the backyard. I'm not sure who it was he could be talking to. Could he have finally made a friend? Being a single mom, it's hard for me to always keep an eye on my son, so I decided to go outside and check on him. When I went in the backyard, I was a bit confused because James was the only person back there. Was he talking to himself? I could have sworn I heard another voice. James, it's time to come inside, I called out to him. He came inside and sat down at the kitchen table. It was about lunchtime, so I decided to make him a turkey sandwich. James, who are you talking to out there? I asked. James looked up for a moment. I was playing with my new friend, he said, smiling. I poured him some milk and continued to pry as any good mother would. Does your friend have a name? Why didn't you ask him to have lunch with us? I asked. James stared at me for a moment before replying. His name is Laughing Jack. I was a bit taken aback Oh, that's a strange name. What does your friend look like? I asked, a bit confused. He's a clown. He has long hair and a big swirly cone nose. He's got so long arms and baggy pants with stripy socks, and he always smiles. I realized my son was talking about imaginary friend. I suppose it is normal for kids his age to have imaginary friends, especially when he has no real kids to play with. It's probably just a phase. The rest of the day went by per as usual. And as it started to get late, so I put James to bed, I tucked him in and gave him a kiss. Made sure to turn on his nightlight before I closed the door. I was pretty tired myself, so I decided to go to bed not long after. I had an awful nightmare. It was dark. I was in some kind of rundown amusement park. I was scared, running through endless fields of empty tents, broken down rides, and abandoned game huts. The whole place had a horrible look to it. Everything was black and white. The prize stuffed animals all hung from nooses in the game huts, all with sick grins stitched into their face. It felt like the whole park was looking at me, even though there wasn't another living thing in sight. Then suddenly I began to hear music. The sounds of Pop Goes the Weasel being played on a squeeze box echoed through the park. It was hypnotizing. I followed its tune to a circus tent, almost in a trance, unable to stop my legs from moving forward. It was pitch black. The only light came from a single spotlight shining on the center of a big top. As I walked toward the light, the music slowed down. I found myself singing along, unable to stop. All around the mulberry bush, the monkeys chased the weasel. The monkey, though, 'twas all in fun. The music stopped right before its climax. Suddenly all the lights shot on. The intensity of the lights was practically blinding. All I could see was a small dark silhouette shuffle towards me. Then another one appeared, and another, and another. There were dozens of them, all coming towards me. I couldn't move my legs. My legs were frozen. All I could do was watch as the haunting figures drew nearer. As they got closer, I could see they were children. As I looked at each one, I noticed they were all horribly disfigured and mutilated. Some had cuts all over their bodies, others were severely burnt, others were missing limbs, even eyes. The children enveloped me, crawling and clawing at my flesh, dragging me to the ground and tearing inside me. The children tore me apart. I faded away. All I could hear was laughter. Horrible, awful, evil laughter. I woke up the next morning in a cold sweat. After taking a few deep breaths, I looked over and saw that a few of James' action figures were positioned facing me on top of my nightstand. I sighed. James had probably woken up and put those there. Gathered up my toys and made my way to James' room. However, when I opened the door, James was sound asleep. I just shrugged and placed the toys back in his toy box. A little while later, James woke up and I made him some breakfast. He was quiet and seemed a bit groggy. Perhaps he didn't sleep well either. I decided to ask him about the toys. James, honey, did you put toys in Mommy's room this morning? His eyes shot up at me for a moment. He quickly glanced down at his cereal. Laughing Jack did it. I rolled my eyes and responded, well, you tell Laughing Jack to keep the toys in your room. James nodded and finished up his breakfast, then decided to go play in the backyard. I went to relax in the living room and must have dozed off because I woke up a couple hours later. Shit, I need to check on James. I was a bit worried. It's been over 2 hours. I haven't checked on him. I went and stepped into the backyard, but James wasn't there anymore. I was getting nervous, so I called out to him, James, where are you? Just then I heard a giggle come from the front yard. I rushed through the gate to around the front of the house. James was sitting on the sidewalk. I breathed a sigh of relief and walked over to him. James, how many times have I told you to stay in the backyard? James, what are you eating? James looked up at me and then reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of hard candies, in all colors. This made me very nervous. James, who gave you those candies? James stared at me, not speaking. James, please tell Mommy where you got that candy. James hung his head down and said, Laughing Jack gave it to me. My heart sunk. I kneeled down and looked him in the eye. James, I've had enough of this damn Laughing Jack thing. He is not real. Now this is a very serious situation, and I need to know who gave you that candy. I could see my son's eyes tear up. But Mama, Laughing Jack did give me the candy. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. James never lied to me, but what he's telling me is impossible. I make him spit out the candy and throw the rest away. James appears to be fine. Maybe I'm just overreacting. After all, he could have gotten it from Tom and Linda next door and Mr. Walker down the street. Either way, I'm going to have to keep a closer eye on James. That night I put James to bed as usual and decided to go to bed early myself. Suddenly, I was woken up by a loud bang coming from the kitchen. I sprung out of bed and hurried down the stairs. When I got to the kitchen, I was horrified. Everything on the counter had been thrown to the floor. Our dog, Fido, hung dead from the light fixture. His stomach was cut open and stuffed with candy, the same type James was eating earlier that day. My shock was quickly broken as a sharp scream came from James' room, followed by loud crashes. I quickly grabbed a knife from the drawer and moved up the stairs with the speed only a mother whose child is in danger could have. I burst through the door and flicked on the lights. Everything in the room was knocked over and tossed to the floor. My poor son in his bed crying, shaking with fear, and a pool of urine staining the sheets. I scooped up my child and ran out of the house and went to the next door, Tom and Linda's house. Luckily, they were still awake. They let me use their phone, and I called the police. It didn't take them long to arrive. I explained what had happened, and they looked at me as if I was crazy. They searched the house, but all they found was a dead dog and 2 trashed rooms. The officer told me that someone had probably gotten in the house and done this right before making a quick escape. Then they heard me coming up the stairs. I knew it wasn't true. All the doors were locked and all the windows were open. Whatever was in my house didn't come from outside. The next day, James stayed inside. I didn't want him to leave my sight. When I went into the garage and found his old baby monitor, I set it up and lit it in his room. If anything comes in tonight, I'm going to be able to hear it. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the largest knife from the drawer and put it on my nightstand. Imaginary friend or not, I'm not letting anything hurt my little baby boy. I put James to bed. He was afraid, but I promised him that I wasn't going to let anything happen to him. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and turned on the nightlight. Before closing the door, I whispered to him, "Good night, James, I love you." I tried staying up as long as I could, but after a few hours I felt myself drifting off. My baby would be safe here for the night, and I needed sleep. Just as I lay my head on the pillow, I heard a soft noise coming from the baby monitor I had put on my nightstand. At first it sounded like interference, like the kind a radio would make. Then it turned to a soft moan. Was James asleep? Then I heard the laugh from my nightmare. It was a horrible laugh. I sprung up from the bed and grabbed the knife under my pillow. I rushed over to James' room and creaked the door open. I tried the light switch, but it wouldn't come on. I took a step in and could feel the warmth of thick liquid on my feet. Suddenly, James' nightlight came on. I could see an absolute horror laid out in front of me. James' body was nailed up on the wall, the nails piercing through his hands and feet. His chest was cut wide open and his organs hung down to the floor. His eyes and tongue had been removed, along with most of his teeth. I was disgusted. I could hardly believe this was my baby boy. Then I heard it again, the soft, desperate moan. James was still alive. My baby, my poor baby. In so much pain, barely clinging to life. I ran across the room and vomited on the floor, but my sickness was interrupted by a horrible cackle coming from behind me. I spun around while still wiping bile from my mouth, and then out of the shadows emerged the fiend responsible for all of this horror. Laughing Jack. His ghost-white skin and matted black hair hung down his shoulders. He had piercing white eyes surrounded by dark black rings. His twisted smile revealed a row of sharp, jagged teeth, and his skin didn't look like skin at all. It was almost like rubber or plastic. He wore a patchy black and white clown outfit with striped sleeved and socks. His body itself was grotesque, his long arms hanging down past his waist. The way he was poised made him look almost boneless, like a rag doll. He let out a sickening laugh, as if to let me know he was pleased with my reaction to his work. He turned around softly in front of James and began laughing even more at the horrific sight that was laid out. That was enough to shake me from my terror. I snapped, "Get away from him, you bastard!" I rushed at the monster, raising my knife above my head, and stabbed down at him. But as soon as the knife touched him, he disappeared in a cloud of black smoke. The knife passed right through and pierced James' still beating heart. Splashing warm blood fell on my face. No, what have I done? My baby, I killed my baby. I immediately fell to my knees as I could hear sirens in the distance growing louder. My boy, my sweet baby boy. I promised Mommy would protect you, but I failed. I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. The police soon arrived to find me in front of my son, still wielding the knife covered in my baby's blood. The trial was short. Insanity. I was placed in the Fearopolis house for the criminally insane, where I have been for the past 2 months. It's not so bad here. The only reason I'm awake now is because someone is playing Pop Goes the Weasel outside my window. I'll talk about it to the orderlies. I just want to make this clear before I get into this. Anything I say about any of these creepypastas, I am not trying to insult whoever made these. These probably took a while to make, and I value and respect your hard work. Now on to my thoughts. I fucking hate this creepypasta. I very rarely swear when I'm not reading something that has swears in it. This is the exception. I hate this thing. I hate, like, with every fiber of my being, I think this is just a horrible creepypasta. Because it's literally all the bad things about creepypastas combined into one creepypasta. You got unnecessary gore. You got a bad plot line. Well, not too bad. It's just basic. It's just basic creepy demon thing. Clown. Who cares? There's weird dreams. They like in horror, kids are usually the center of danger. But that shouldn't be the entire reason. Like, when you use kids as horror, it's to make it seem a bit scarier sometimes, or it's for a narrative reason. In this, it's just to make it scary. Like, this creepypasta is just so bad. 0 out of 0. 100%. Without a shadow of a doubt, 0 out of 0. I hate this creepypasta. No one can change my mind. There's also a weird number of people who seem to like it. Slender Man. There it is again. What is that thing? I can't take this anymore. It's like it's everywhere. Everywhere I go, all I see is this horrible, tall, thin, and seemingly faceless creature. It's been haunting my dreams as well ever since I first saw it. All it does is stand there and watch me. I can't shake this constant feeling of being watched. It's like I'm never alone. I hate it. I can't sleep. I can't go outside. I can't function as a normal person anymore without it being there. I've done a lot of research into it in the last couple days, Googling what I can do and best describe it as. All I can remember is it being an impossibly tall, thin man. As I say, impossibly, because no human could be that height and that thin. It's just so goddamn unnatural. I tried my best to remember its face. I figured it would help me narrow the search, but there just wasn't any. I have no memory of seeing this thing's face. It was always just a blur, but then I could never look at it long enough without feeling uneasy. I usually walked in the other direction or something, or if it was a dream or a nightmare at that point, I would just always wake up before I could get a clear look. Well, the search proved me with something called the Slenderman. What the fuck is a Slenderman? This mythical creature that's the thing that's been stalking me? No, it can't be. I refuse to believe it. I've not left my house in 2 days. I've been held up reading all these Slenderman stories and accounts. Needless to say, sleep has eluded me for the duration. Nothing's going right anymore. I think I've angered it by not letting it in my dreams. I keep hearing banging on my windows late at night and the creaking of floorboards as I'm laying in bed. They say houses do that on their own, but this is different. The creaks aren't of that house settling. There's a weight behind them, like soft footsteps. However, every time I go to look, there's nothing there. But when I re-enter my room, I always get the sensation I'm being watched. Tell me, have you ever been sitting in a room by yourself, windows and doors closed, and suddenly a door opens for no reason? I think everyone has, but I'm different. I swear it's not the draft. I've had all the windows locked for about a week now. And I'm not one to believe in ghosts or anything of the sort. This just has an eerie feel to it. Whenever a door spontaneously opens, it gets noticeably colder in the room. The second I leave a room, however, all the other rooms are back to normal. It's not like my thermostat's on the brink. Any room, however, except my own. My room has been getting cold recently, real cold. I've resorted to lighting candles all around my room to try and heat up the place. I don't even know what's happening. I'm starting to lose it. I went outside for the first time in over a week today. I thought maybe my delusions were coming from being cooped up and spending too much time scaring myself, reading about the Slender Men. I went through my day-to-day life as best as I could, and to my surprise, no sightings of that thing. Everything was going fine, in fact. But I was starting to forget about the whole thing. That wasn't until I was heading home. I was walking through the woods, trying to take in as much fresh air as possible before I went home, when I stumbled across a piece of paper lying there in the middle of the footpath. I'd normally have just written off to be some litter left by someone, but it was crisp white. It looked like it had been carefully placed there, no longer than perhaps 20 minutes ago. I picked it up and turned it over. It was a drawing of that thing, the Slenderman. A very crude sketch depicted him with the words, "No, no, 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 no," scribbled down the sides of the page. As I tried to decipher the page, the clouds quickly darkened, turning to heavy black. I did my best to get home quick before the rain hit. I thought to myself, now I'm home, sitting staring at this fucking picture, going out of my mind. I'm trying to figure out just how it got there and where it was, thinking about how new it looked and wondering what sick fuck drew this out and left it for me there. I'm just gonna go to bed as well as get some sleep. I swear that picture's cursed. Slenderman was in my dream again last night. It seemed so real. I was lying in bed in my dream. I had woken up to see him standing there in the corner of my room. I tried to scream, move, do anything, but I couldn't. I lay there frozen in fear, wondering what would happen next. He just lifted his arm and stretched it a good 10 feet to the headboard of my bed and rested his hand. I say hand, but it didn't feel like hands, more like tendrils over my eyes. I went back to sleep. When I woke up, there was nothing. What a fucked up dream. Oh, and do you know what else has been happening since I brought that picture home? My electronics have been fucking up. My laptop shuts down on its own, even with full battery. My TV randomly turns static. My phone keeps getting no reception, along with the opening of doors. The constant sound of footsteps at night. You can get the picture. I'm burning it tonight. I'm taking it out to the back and setting that fucker alight. No, this can't be happening. I watched that get burnt last night. I took a piece of paper outside last night and watched it burn. How can it be back? What kind of twisted bastard would put a duplicate copy through someone's mailbox? This really isn't funny. I can't even phone for help because my electronics won't stop acting up. I'm too paranoid to leave the house. I don't know what to do. What was that? I swear I heard something move. It must have. Because it woke me up. It was no ordinary footsteps that I heard at the beginning of all this. Oh no, it was a loud and deliberate thud. It must be messing with me. The Slenderman knows I'm here. I would get out of bed and turn the light on. But there's no point. He's been messing with the electrics. I lay here scared out of my mind and staring in total darkness. I know this sounds crazy, but have you ever seen a darker shade of black than normal? Like when you're in a dark room with only a little light and everything casts a shadow, but some shadows seem darker than others. I swear, even though I'm currently near blind darkness, the corner is darker than the rest. It's the same corner that was in my nightmare, like the darkness is moving. My night vision is getting better and I can see in a little more detail. Oh no. I can see the outline of a man form in the corner. It's really a really tall, thin man. Looks like he's wearing a suit. Oh god, it's him. He's here, just like in my dream. I lay here frozen in fear, wondering what's gonna happen. He lifts his arm and stretches it across my room, over to my head. He rests his hands. Oh no, these aren't hands. These are tendrils on my forehead. I thought about grabbing his arm and trying to push it away, or remember getting up out of bed and trying to break down the door, but something told me there's no use. Nothing would help me now. His tendrils grew in length and snaked down my entire body, slowly wrapping themselves around me in some sort of blackened cocoon. Before I could scream it, the blackness reached onto my face and covered my mouth. As it enveloped my head, the last thing to be covered was my eyes, which were firmly shut the whole time. I decided to open them one last time. I looked directly up, and he was standing directly over me, looking down. That was the last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me. Although he has no face, I swear he seemed to smile. So, that was Slender Man, and not gonna lie, I think this one's, it's not the best, but it's decent. It's definitely decent. I would, I think the main thing is it's kind of weird. Like, most creepypastas, you can actually get a sense of, like, how they're being written. Some creepypastas, like Laughing Jack, which you've just heard me state that I hate with every fiber of my being, that one seems more like it should be like a story, not a creepypasta, because most creepypastas seem like it's someone talking on the internet. Like, how is someone in an asylum talking on the internet? But, like, this one, it also, like, it kind of implies that they died or something. Something happened to them. If they were still alive, they'd probably mention that at the end. But, like, it's kind of confusing how they would be posting that. With other ones like Smile Dog or something, it makes sense. The person's trying to spread on the curse. Stuff like that. But, yeah. I think Slenderman's decent. I'd give it about a 5.9. It's close to a 6, but definitely not a 6. So, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you, especially, for watching this. This video is pretty long, took a while to make, so if you're here, definitely thank you. It helped me a lot, probably, if you watched the full thing, or even watched, like, half of it. That probably gives me tons of watch time. But, yeah, thank you for watching. If you want to see some of the, like, mess-ups I made while recording this, you can listen to them, right after this. But, yeah, thank you, and good night. As I approached them, to my horror, I saw the Cinnamon. From a witness. No. Go to sleep. Alright, now that sounds... He grabs the toil. He grabs the towel. Towel. Oh. Yeah. Okay, mommy. That sounded oddly sexual. How can I say that without it sounding sexual? Okay, mommy. That sounds sexual. How am I supposed to say that without it sounding sexual? How am I supposed to say "K, mommy" without it saying sexual? He's also supposed to sound crazy, so I can't say like "K, mommy" like that. Oh, why? No matter what, it sounds sexual. Okay, I'm just gonna say okay.